that we get to have the chance to compare it to one of the best Fordham teams of all time, the 1970-71 team. So it's going to be a great show.
Yeah, to have that comparison to 1970 and 71 really is an honor with what this team, did. Led by head coach Digger Phelps, they went 26-3 on the year, made it to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. Just a really special season for them that we're going to dive into. We're going to break it all down. We got Pat Amatoro and Andrew Craneri back there behind the glass helping us out in production as well for this show. Should be a great one. Tons of guests. And let's just run through the show right now.
We'll go back and forth.
Let's run through it.
There's so many guests. It's kind of hard to.
It is. There's a lot of guests. It starts with Frank McLaughlin. He's definitely a great one to have right off the top. Assistant coach of that 1971 team, former Fordham athletic director. His name is on the court.
And
you
know what?
We
missed the opportunity, I believe, to get him for an interview when he got the retirement for the court. For when he got the
so it's great to have him
the
on.
honor for that. So it's great to have him now.
Yeah,
he was part of that team as an assistant coach. So that's a great interview. I was just listening to Bid Thomas Aiello, our play-by-play guy. He's doing the game for URI today. He did a great job with that one. That's a great interview.
Yeah, and part of why this show is so special, not to deviate from the rundown here, but it's because both of us have called Fordham basketball this year, sharing that experience of what being a part of kind of this Fordham program and this Fordham basketball program and what they've been able to do this year, and a lot of similarities like we talked about to the 70-71 team, which really makes you very appreciative of the history of this program, of where this team comes from ultimately going back to this team. But Frank McLaughlin will have a lot of great insight. A Fordham Hall of Famer, Thomas Aiello, sat down with him. That'll be an interview right after this segment here at the top of the show. And then we're going to break down the team. We're going to go through this 1970-71 team. We're going to start from their journey at the beginning of the year all the way to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. At the end of the year, they were ranked 9th in the AP poll to end the season, which was, obviously incredibly impressive.
Imagine a top 10 Fordham team.
Exactly. Like when you think about it, and for us here, at least today, it's really shows how talented that group was. Featured wins at Madison Square Garden over 14th ranked Notre Dame, St. John's, Miami, Syracuse. A lot of big time programs that Fordham took down in that dominant season. It really is impressive to look back
and
on.
Just taking a look at the schedule, like you mentioned, seeing Fordham along like these blue blood programs that they're taking down at this time. I mean, they were the talk of the town. They're playing games at Madison Square Garden. They're selling out that arena, world's most famous arena. Not once they play there, but twice, 3 times, I even think. So they're there. And then Rose Hill Gym, just think about how historic what that is. Same gym in 1970-71 that they're going to be playing a basketball game in today. They're going to honor the team at halftime like we talked about. That's going to be really special. And one thing I want to talk about with them honoring it, you think about the year, 1970-71, 50 years later, it's COVID. So they can't really honor the team that usually you get these, 10, 20, 30 years, they're going to honor the team. This is kind of to make up for the fact they couldn't during COVID. So it comes at maybe not the best time considering 52 years, but I think it lines up perfectly because they didn't have the opportunity at 50, and then you have a great team to couple it with. It's going to be sold out. If this was 3-4 years ago when you're honoring this team, it might be an empty Rose Hill Gym.
Yeah.
That will absolutely not be the case today.
Exactly, and that's definitely, I think, a blessing in disguise of obviously this getting pushed, originally for 2020, now taking place in 2023 with the season that the current Fordham Rams have had. And we'll talk with some of the current Fordham Rams, including the head coach, Keith Ergo. So myself and Ryan Gregoire sat down with him. Always a really great interview, always has so much energy, and really you can tell, we've talked about it, has such a pride for Fordham University. He really loves this place. He loves this program. And you can see that even, talking about a team, all the way back in 1970 and 71, you can tell how much he loves Fordham University in this program.
And his father attended Fordham, so he, has family history, even though he himself did not attend the school. But, he knows the history. He knows it from his father. He knows it just from being part of this basketball program. And it's great to have him part of the program as a head coach now. There as associate last year, really kind of carried over that culture that began last season. And you're kind of seeing on full display. And it's a really exciting time for Fordham Hoops fan. A lot of that is because of Keith Ergo.
And that already is hour one. So that'll push us into hour two already.
That's a stacked hour, Sam.
It's a stacked hour.
Stacked hour.
You know, Mike, it's going to be another stacked hour in hour
stacked...
two. Because outside of after the station ID, after the first hour is done, we have Ed Cole, who's going to be live in studio, the Fordham athletic director. Of course, a lot of why we're celebrating the team today was put together by him and obviously by the administration and everything that Fordham has been able to do to honor this team. So we'll talk to him about all that and super excited to catch up with Ed Cole.
We're talking a lot about the 1970-71 team, but something that's really important to note, there's no Kyle Neptune, there's no Keith Ergo without Ed Cole and what he's done for the program to build it. And I also think what's so great about, what he's done as an athletic director is that he understands, the proper times to honor a team. And, this is a great opportunity to reflect on history of, your school. And I think some other schools don't really do a great job of that. I think it's a great opportunity that we're able to have this halftime ceremony, really look back on this team, reflect on what they're doing. And, it's easy to say that Fordham not really a basketball school, but when you think about how great the women's have been the past 10 years and that there's a lot of storied history with the men's team in the 70s, 80s, and now what the men's have started to do, both women's and men's have really started to make it a basketball school. So it's only, it's a great opportunity to reflect on the history of the school basketball-wise.
Definitely true. And after that interview with Ed Cole, we will have Malcolm Moran, who we recorded yesterday. The guests just keep on rolling. The founder of One-on-One
of this
on
show.
One-on-One, which is always a really special moment.
Twister.
It is a little bit. We had him for the Vin Scully show over the summer, which we were both a part of, which was really awesome to have him on that and his perspective on him. But, a guy who attended the Fordham St. John's game at Madison Square Garden and was not a Fordham student in 70-71, but was really, surrounded by this team, locked into this team. He was living in New York. So, really had a lot to owe, and it was very cool. His inspiration and really, his career path towards, executive director of the Basketball Writers Association, surrounding himself with the game of basketball, which he's done for the past, over 40 years. He said he's been to 42 straight Final Fours is what he said, something crazy like that. So his career is awesome, first of all, but it stems, he said, a lot of that inspiration from this 70-71 team. And I think that's part of, the takeaway from a show like this is that this team had an impact not only on Fordham as a program, but on a lot of individuals who really found inspiration in this team, seemingly coming from, they hadn't been to the NCAA tournament in since the 50s. It was a program that hadn't done a whole lot as of late. And, at that time, and then they were able to take it and run with it with Digger Phelps. And I think that shows, what the program means, not just to Fordham, but to a lot of individuals, too.
And I don't want to spoil the rundown, but you mentioned Malcolm Moran and the influence. He wasn't really at the school at the time they were playing. We're going to talk to Tom Sabella, Bob Heck, who weren't broadcasters at the time, but 2 years later, they're calling Fordham Notre Dame at the Rose Hill Gym. And they had an effect. They had an influence from how great this team was. Obviously, some turnover from 1970 to 71 to the 72-73 team that they were able to call for, but Ken Charles was still a part of it. It was still kind of that same atmosphere around the team, a very exciting team. So, we're going to hear from them as well, but I think it just goes to your point, saying that people who weren't really at the school at the time or maybe really part of a team still had a great influence from it.
Leading into, I would say into hour number 3, you mentioned Tom Sabella and Bob Heck. Those two interviews will be during that hour 3. Two broadcasters, WFUV guys, which is awesome to catch up with, fellow WFUV sports broadcasters, guys that called the 1973 Fordham upset over Notre Dame and were at the university and were also a part of that, 70-71 season, all that came with that. But before that, is what I think, I would say I'm certainly the most excited for is we're going to have 9 members of the 70-71 team live in studio. They're going to be coming in. We'll kind of bring them in waves and talk to all of them, including head coach Digger Phelps, including Charlie Elverton, who's getting his number 34 retired today. So that, Mike, is going to be a really awesome moment. We, over the last couple of days have done a lot of research on this team and have looked into all the stats and looked into, the schedule and all that kind of stuff. But to be able to do that and then see them, right here next to us, it's a pretty special moment for the two of us as well, just to be able to have these guys here and hear their perspective on the season.
Yeah, I mean, talk about Charlie Elverton, just what he was as a Fordham Ram. I know we're going to get into it more, but, career 17 points per game, averaged a touch under 9 rebounds for his career. And his final year at Rose Hill, I mean, he dominated, exploded for over 20 points per game, averaged a double-double. And we'll get into all the stats, all the nuts and bolts of this team, but just a little bit of a preview. He was a terrific player, without a doubt deserves to have his number up in the rafters, and to be able to speak with them. And the rest of the players that all got to know the team and, were part of that ride, that was 26 wins and, made it that far in the NCAA tournament. It's going to be special. We're not really sure how it's going to go. We're going to have a lot of different guests shuffling in and out.
It's going to be a little chaotic maybe at times, but
for one, it's
going
to be exciting, and it's going to be a great watch. That's 100% for sure.
Yeah, definitely will be a great watch. It's going to be an awesome show. All things 1970-71 Fordham basketball. I say we let this get started here. Let's
do this.
Let's get it started. On the other side of the break, Thomas Aiello is going to sit down with the assistant coach of the 71 team, former Fordham athletic director Frank McLaughlin. Stick around right after the break.
What's up, everyone? I'm Julia Moss, one of the hosts of WFUV's women's sports podcast, All In. Join us each week as we break down everything from the WNBA, women's collegiate sports, the NWSL, and so much more. We're also joined by recurring hosts including Maddie Bamonte, Taylor Masetta, Sam Bohr, and Annabelle Watson. All In is a production of WFUV Sports.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to One-on-One, a very special one-on-one. I'm Thomas Aiello, honoring the Fordham men's basketball team from 1971, 26-3, ended up 9th in the country, and I am now joined by former assistant coach on that Digger Phelps-led team, Fordham administrator, athletic director, Fordham Hall of Famer, Frank McLaughlin. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk about this team.
It's going to be a special weekend. We're all and everybody's coming. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great weekend, and we're so excited that our basketball team is doing so well. So hopefully we have a great weekend. We beat Rhode Island.
Well, it's been over 50 years since Fordham's had a season like they're having this year, but you were actually part of that 1971 team, but you were also a player before you became an assistant under Digger Phelps, and you happened to play with Charlie Elverton. What did you notice about him the first time you became his teammate on the varsity squad?
Well, it was pretty interesting. When I was an undergraduate and playing, I sort of helped out on recruiting too. So I helped recruit Charlie from Brother Rice High School. His high school coach was a Fordham graduate, Mike Brown, very intelligent guy and stuff like that. So Rice had a special team. They had, Dean Meminger and Charlie Elverton, and Charlie decided to come to Fordham and he had a very good career, but that last year was very special. It made it a great career. So
now, from what I understand as well, the team was 10-15 the year before Digger showed up. You had graduated, and then you became an assistant. When Digger arrived that first week, and he was asked, why would you pick Fordham? And he said, well, they already know how to lose. Now I'm going to teach them how to win. What did that signal to you about the direction and the vision that he had to bring the program to new heights?
Well, first of all, everybody was shocked when Digger Phelps was named the coach of Fordham, because nobody knew who the hell he was. And he was a very successful assistant at Penn. And then they created a full-time assistant's position, which they had never had before. And because the pay was so low and nobody's interested in the job, Digger had to settle on me. So it was really we didn't know each other before I took the job, and we just had a great relationship. But he was charismatic. He came in and just built positive energy, and everybody. Now we had a good team. I mean, the record before might have been 10-15, but they lost some close games, and they were young. But it's just a great blend of a charismatic coach with very good players that believed that they were going to win. And it was amazing to me. We started the year, and we beat Yale, and we beat Syracuse, and we beat Seton Hall, and then we went on the road, which is hard. But to win at Miami, I think the thing about this thing is, if you look at that schedule they played, it was unbelievable. The road wins they had at Miami, at Florida, at UMass. I mean, they had some great road wins. So they were a team that sort of just meshed together and all believed in each other and really overachieved.
Do you remember, or do you recall rather, the first interaction you had behind closed doors with Digger?
It was interesting because I was working at Holy Cross with Jack Donahue, who was a Fordham grad, and a lot of people thought Jack Donahue was going to get the Fordham job. And that spring, I was offered a job at Clemson, which there was Coach Tate Slock, who was very successful. So I was going to take that job. And then Digger met with me, and he this is how convincing it was. He says, if you go down to Clemson, you're going to be the third assistant. You come to Fordham, you're going to be my only assistant. And you're so young, you're going to get coaching experience by coaching the freshman team. So Digger convinced me. And it's very funny that one of Digger's best friends was a high school coach in New York, and he turned the job down, and because it didn't pay so well. And for years, we see each other, and he said, "My God, I can't believe how stupid I was. If I had taken that job a year later, I would have been the assistant at Notre Dame." But Digger was great. He was just really enthusiastic, reached out to the students, and we became the pride of New York. I mean, it was just unbelievable. New York City people have a great respect for Fordham as an academic institution. They know Fordham is really great. And then athletically, they want to root for us because they know we have very good student athletes. So it just meshed. And then we ended up winning some games. I think beating UMass at UMass was a phenomenal game. Nobody beat UMass at Kerry Hicks Cage, and they had Julius Irving. And then Charlie Overton had a career game, which really got him a very high draft pick because of the way he played against Julius. And then we came back, and we, you tell people, we're going to play Notre Dame in the Garden, it's going to sell out. People thought you were crazy. College basketball then did not sell out, but we sold out the Notre Dame game and beat Notre Dame 94-88. It was sort of interesting. I had scouted Notre Dame. We were a pressing team. And I came back from Chicago, and Digger says, "Well, what do you think?" and stuff. And I said, I think we should zone them. And we hadn't played zone at all. But the only teams that Notre Dame lost to that year were zone teams. So we surprised them. We started in a zone and caught them off guard. And Billy Maynard, who's a great defensive player. So at halftime, when we switched back to man-to-man, Maynard had no fouls. So he was really able to shut down Austin Carr and do a great job. And then the following Thursday, we played Marquette, number 2 team in the country, took them to overtime, sellout crowd. I mean, it was so popular that ABC Radio, which didn't do games, did the games with Marv Albert. There was so much interest in it.
So you talk about having the city by its horns and some of the names that you guys had. You already mentioned Bill Maynard, and Charlie Elverton, but Kenny Charles was also a part of this team. And now he was originally going to go to Columbia. He admitted in an interview recently with Ed Randall on Fordham Athletics YouTube page. But when Ken Charles showed up, and he was a sophomore on the varsity team that year, as the second leading scorer, did anyone really expect him to elevate to the sort of player he was that first real season on varsity?
Well, Kenny played at a Jesuit high school, Brooklyn Prep. His coach was a good friend and very helpful. I think he helped us get Kenny. And that's another interesting point. We were playing and we were winning, and then we had a big game against Holy Cross in early January. And Holy Cross was very good. I had worked there the year before, but they were very big and slow. And so we ended up deciding to put Kenny Charles. That's the first game he started. And it was the first time that we used 4 guards. And it became very successful. Holy Cross just couldn't cover us. I think the score was 29-2 at the beginning of the game. It was like unbelievable, So, yeah, that was a very big, that Holy Cross game was a turning point because that's the first time Kenny became a starter.
So who was starting in Ken Charles's place before he moved?
I believe it was George Zambetti. Who was a very integral part of the team and stuff like that, because you don't really need 5 guys. You need 7 guys, 8 guys, to play. But it just so happened with the matchups, how that worked out.
So the first loss actually came against Temple, against Chief Litwack, and who's a very, very respected coach, both at Temple and in the world of college basketball. When you went to play legends, all these coaching icons, young Bob Knight at Army, Chuck Daly at Boston College, Al McGuire, this one, Johnny D, every single night, and you were walking in there with a 28-year-old head coach named Digger, yourself just essentially out of college, a very young staff. Did that ever bother you guys a little bit? Like, wow, we're really going up against great coaches, and they were
never entered our minds. We were just young, enthusiastic, and thought we could beat anybody. And matter of fact, the Temple game that we lost, I think it was 67-66, and Charlie Elverton played the game, but he was sick that game, so we lost by 1 point. If Charlie was healthy, we probably would have won that game.
And when you guys looked at Yelverton, his numbers the year before were not what they were his senior year, but they were decent numbers. When he exploded into eventually the 1971 Haggerty Award winner, did you guys ever expect him to have that sort of leap? Because I know Digger admitted a while ago that he had a good feeling about the team, but I don't think he really envisioned what you guys had achieved that year. Did you expect Yelverton to take a leap like that, or did you sort of try to maybe ease him in a little bit more?
I don't think we expected it. We knew he was very good, but as the season went on, everybody overachieved. I'll tell you, Jackie Burek, the point guard, who was also a great baseball player, he was a hard-nosed guy and a great leader on the floor. He got those guys organized. We just had a great Tommy Sullivan. He had 6'4", left-handed kid from St. Helena's High School in the Bronx. He came there, and he was quick as a cat. And when he was back at the press, he would anticipate and make steals and stuff. And then people would thought they could take the ball to the basket against him because he was only 6'4", but he could really jump. So he would block some shots. So everybody on that team, I believe, overachieved. Bart Waterwitz was a young kid from Jersey. He came in, and they all complimented each other. It was a great feeling.
So I'll ask you this, because I know right now with Keith Ergo's team, the big thing we see with them beyond the on-court product is culture, and a culture around Fordham athletics and the basketball team specifically. You guys had that as well for one season. How important is it to build a culture for people not only to come to your games and care, but sort of have a team to identify with and call their own? And what did that have you guys sort of thinking as the season went on?
It's funny because I watched this year's team and I go to the games and stuff, and it's similar in some ways in the sense of the expectation level was not high. They're overachieving, and they've created a great institutional pride. There's places you go now, you wear a Fordham cap, everybody says, "Oh, you guys have a great basketball team. You guys, beat St. Bonaventure. You guys are doing this, or doing that." And it was reminiscent of the 70-71 team that really captivated New York. It was everywhere you went, people knew and respected Fordham.
Now, Frank, if you track down the seasons in college basketball in New York City, a couple come to mind: the '85 St. John's team, the 1971 Fordham team. There's a couple others, I'm sure, that are up there. Some Seton Hall runs, PJ Carlissimo, of course, in the late '80s, early '90s. Where would you rank the 1971 Fordham season among the great seasons in the history of New York college basketball?
It's got to be up near the top. I mean, I'm sure it's in the top 5. I'm not trying to. St. John's had a great run in the Final Four and stuff like that. Seton Hall, PJ's team went to the Final Four, but Fordham's team is up there in the top 5. And if you look at the season, we lost to Temple. Charlie was sick. We played Villanova, and we ended up losing by 10. Villanova was second in the country. And in that game, looking back on it, Charlie got 3 fouls and we took him out. I guess if we knew what the hell we were doing, we probably would have kept him in the game to see if we could get a chance to win. And then, of course, Villanova had to forfeit that game because they had illegal players in Howard Porter and stuff like that. So, I mean, you're talking about a team that played a great schedule, won great road games. So 26-3 and really 27-2. It was extraordinary, and losing to a Villanova team that ended up playing UCLA in the championship.
Now, coming back over 50 years later to celebrate this team specifically at the Rose Hill Gym, and is expected that Charlie Yelverton's number is going to be retired, raised to the rafters next to Ed Conlon, Kenny Charles, Mullins, and all those guys. For him
and Dan Gregory O'Connell, who was
let's not forget, yes,
players at Fordham.
Let's not forget Ann Gregory. That's absolutely correct. But to see his number go up and to sort of reunite with everybody on Saturday, what are you most looking forward to, and what's the one thing that you're really going to remember as the ceremony is going to take place?
Well, first of all, Charlie's number would have been retired much sooner, except for the fact that he lives in Italy. And he wasn't coming. If he ever came to New York, we would have retired his number sooner. But it worked in great with this. A real tribute to this is every single person is coming. I mean, Digger's coming from South Bend. Everybody is going out of their way to be there. So I think it says it's a great tribute to Charlie. It's a great tribute to Fordham and how much Fordham meant to all of these people. And it's a great tribute to show you what kind of a team it was, that there's 50 years later, there's still a very strong bond.
Well, no one embodies the spirit of Fordham University better than Mr. Frank McLaughlin. Frank, thank you so much for the time.
All right, great. And it's great to see the institutional pride back at Fordham.
We'll be right back here on One on One.
Hey everyone, I'm Will Grant.
And I'm Chris Persianen.
And we're two of the hosts for WFUV's very own basketball podcast, Pick and Pod.
Tune in weekly for updates and our takes on the latest around the NBA, as well as exclusive insight from our very own Knicks and Nets beat reporters.
We'll have you covered on everything from all of the NBA's latest drama we know and love,
to debating all year long which team will get to lift that golden Larry O'Brien in June.
So don't miss a beat from the hardwood on WFUV's Pick and Pod.
Back here on One, honoring the 1970-71 Fordham basketball team, Sam Davis and Mike Calamari. That was a great interview there with Frank McLaughlin, with Thomas Aiello. We're going to break down this team now. We're going to break down the magical season from start to finish. First of all, heading into the year, this team, Fordham a year ago in 1969-1970 was 10-15. On the year. They had not made the NCAA tournament since 1954, but there were 6 players on that team that would transition and be there the following year with the 70-71 group. Charlie Elverton was there. John Burek was there. Others were getting, very valuable experience on that 69 team that really helped prepare them for 1970 and 71. And obviously, one of the big turning points was getting a guy like Digger Phelps and what he was able to do in just 1 year at Fordham, taking over the reins as the head coach, taking that foundation, building on it, and then having all the success he did in that just 1 year. Digger Phelps was definitely extremely instrumental to this team from the start of the year and moving on going forward.
Yeah, and it really was, I guess, him coming in, establishing himself as a head coach. I know only for the one season, but, if you even, think back to our recent history, Kyle Neptune coming in one season, one-year coaches can make a huge impact on a program. And, you talked about in that Frank McLaughlin interview, this team had a lot of talent. They were going to come in and be good, I think, regardless of the head coach, but I think they reached their maximum potential. Credit to Digger Phelps for doing that. He really was the thing that really helped them, reach that level.
And Mike, in college basketball nowadays, obviously the transfer portal is such a big thing, but obviously at the time in 1970 and 71, it's a completely different landscape of the sport as a whole. When you're with a team, for the most part, you're with them for 4 years. Obviously, there's certain, exceptions and different scenarios. But for the most part, these guys are really, building that camaraderie, building that chemistry together as a group. They were able to do that and carry that in to 70, 71. And safe to say, they were firing on all cylinders from the beginning of the year. They went off and from game one, they won 12 straight games to start the season, really started to put this team on the map, let everyone know that this is a serious contender. They defeated teams like Pittsburgh, Seton Hall, Syracuse, Miami, Florida, California. All of those teams, all of those, big-time programs, all within a month and a half of the season starting.
And their first 4 games at the Rose Hill Gym, so they welcome Yale, they welcome Pittsburgh, they welcome Seton Hall and Lafayette, and they start the year 4-0. And like you mentioned, 11 games to start. They have 11-game winning streak, but they start at home and they do a great job at home. They go to Columbia, they win at Columbia, and then they beat Syracuse at home too. So they don't travel that much in those first, 6 or so games before they go to, Miami Beach Convention Center where they play Miami and they win there. So they played a lot local New York. They got the buzz going early, and then when they hit the road, they continued playing some great basketball. On that 2-game, road trip down in Florida, they get Miami, they get Florida, they win both those games. So they went on the road in big games there. Then neutral site against California, they get that win as well before they come back to the Rose Hill Gym. And they don't lose until it's Temple. They lose by 1 point, 67-66 at the Rose Hill Gym. But before then, they had an 11-game winning streak heading into that one. They started off the year on fire.
Yeah, they're certainly on fire. And not only were they winning these games, they were convincing wins as yes. well. There were a couple close victories against Miami and against Florida, I believe. Those 2 games were particularly close. Maybe,
the Miami game was a 2-point win, 85-83.
That's a close one. I think Florida was maybe 8 points or 7 points, something like that.
Yeah, right, 7 points.
But other than that, these are all double-digit victories. So not only are they beating these teams, but they're really handling them very easily. And I think that showed that, not only is this program beating some big-time, programs outside of their area as well, but they're doing it with ease. They were up to 14th in the AP poll, so nationally they were really starting to get some serious recognition as well.
You talk about that. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Through their first 6 games before they go down to Miami, their smallest margin of victory was 12 points, and I mean that was against Pittsburgh at home. I mean. That's dominance.
Yeah.
And I think it's one thing to win games. It's another thing to win games by a lot against really good teams. Like that really adds to the momentum. You know, you're taking down teams like that, and then to have your one loss by 1 point, you know, close game, anything can happen in that. It's a testament to, you know, how good this team was off the bat. Didn't take time for them. I think the time was that season before, but they get the new head coach in, they start getting things right, and then they really take off.
You mentioned that first loss to Temple. That was a 1-point loss, breaking that winning streak. Immediately after that, they go on the road. They take down UMass, who was led by Dr. J. I mean, Julius Erving led that team a serious way to respond to their first loss of the season, going up against a guy like that.
I wish I could just check. So, you know, we're using, you know, sports reference or college basketball reference, whatever you want to call it. They only have box scores for the 3 games in the NCAA tournament. I looked into Fordham's website. I guess the box scores are maybe hidden somewhere, or they're only on paper. They haven't been digitized.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, or maybe they don't really have them. That would have been a box score where I would want to see, you know, how Charlie Yelverton match up against Dr. J.
How many points did Dr. J have in that game? It's not exactly something we could get at our fingertips. I mean, maybe, you know, Mike, I'll give you a minute to maybe look into that.
And, you know, it's a great question. It's a great question. I mean, Dr. J averaged 27 points per game that year.
Yeah.
He averaged, you know, close to 20 rebounds. It's a great question, you know.
I mean, that's what it's
when the players
averaging 27 and 20 is pretty.
26.9 and 19.5.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, yeah, you know, NBA Hall of Famer.
And I think the thing is that he, you know, I know we're getting at it, but we'll get right back on track. But Dr. J, he's 6'6". At that time, that's like a big man.
Yeah, that's a big man.
And or it's a 4. I mean, you know, maybe it's a bigger 3, but it's definitely, you know, 3-4.
Because
he moves in like a guard.
So on the Fordham team, there was so Paul Griswold was 6'8", but he was hurt, so he didn't play all year. He was hurt before the season. And I believe so. Other than that, it was George Zimbetti, who will be here actually. He's 6'5". You know, and Big Bart, he was 6'6" as a sophomore forward.
This is smaller.
So
team.
it was a smaller team. So to go up and match up against a guy like that and have success is really impressive. And I think that and part of that's coaching. When you have a guy like Digger and when he can, he can game plan to kind of, you know, obviously hide that size disadvantage versus, you know, some of these bigger teams, and still find a way to grind it out and beat these teams just with a different sort of, whether it be different defensive game plan or different matchups or whatever it may be. You know, he found a way to exploit those and really use their, you know, weakness, like I would say use their strengths and kind of fight against some of those weaknesses that they may have had in terms of size.
Yeah. And I mean, when you look at this team, you look at the starters for their NCAA game, which we'll get to against Furman, Charlie Yelverton, Bill Maynard, Ken Charles, and, you know, outside of you know those 3 guys, it's definitely a smaller lineup.
Yeah, I think they went 4 guards for a decent amount of time, which I want to ask Digger about, because I'm curious I don't think that was something that was done very often at that time. We see 4 guards in a lineup a lot now in college basketball and in the NBA. But at that time, that really wasn't something that happened much. You went with the traditional 2 guards and 2 forwards and a center, or 3 guards and 2 big men, whatever it may be. And that's something that they kind of switched it up, and it worked for them.
And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but Charlie Yelverton he's listed at 6'2". I mean, he led the team in rebounds.
Yeah.
And he had 19 rebounds in that first NCAA game, leading the team in that. I mean, he was not the biggest guy on the floor for this Fordham Rams, but it's a credit. You think about the offensive skill that he possessed, but just also, you know, the physicality, the ability to grab rebounds, read rebounds. He added all that to the team as well. I know we're kind of a little all over the place. We'll get back to the schedule.
That's okay.
But
there's nothing wrong with it.
It's, you know, it's just, you know, this is definitely a different team than some of the teams they played, but they still came out with wins.
So looking, you know, going back to the schedule here, at the midway point of the season, or about at there, Fordham still had a lot of challenges, you know, coming up in their schedule. One of them was a big one against St. John's at Madison Square Garden. It was a Saturday afternoon, middle of February, and the crowd wasn't really there. There was 7,000 fans. MSG holds 20,000, and there were a couple games after that, Notre Dame in particular, and Marquette as well, that sold out Madison Square Garden for Fordham. So it's not like, I think it was just the fact that, sure, the team had really, you know, built a ton of momentum, a lot of wins. They've only lost 1 game, but it's New York City, and I think to get the attention of New York City, a game at MSG against St. John's, who historically has a very, very good program. Although Fordham was better than them in this particular season, St. John's, I mean, as a program, has had tons of trips to the NCAA tournament and has really built something for a number of years over in Queens for them. But with what Fordham was able to do that year and prove that the Rams are the best team in New York, or prove that they're certainly better than St. John's in 1970 and 71. Which is, I think, a really massive win to have that at Madison Square Garden. We talked about them being put on the map after opening up the year with a big win streak, but I think a game like this in MSG in February, people in New York City, even if you're not involved with Fordham, even if you're not even a huge basketball fan, you start to really notice that, hey, this team is really talented. This team can really go places. And I think that's what this kind of win against St. John's, another convincing win. They were ranked 19th in the AP poll that season. They were 18-9 on the year. So a good team, and to get that victory was huge for Fordham.
Yeah, totally. And just thinking about selling out Madison Square Garden, that's just what this team was. They were that, popular in New York City. They were, like it's been said before, they were the talk of the town. They lose to Temple, and then, that's, kind of the start of a new win streak. They, take down UMass on the road, and then that St. John's games for 5 straight. They win that game at Madison Square Garden. They go Notre Dame. They win that as well. And then the Rutgers game on the road. That's 7 straight.
Yeah.
So after 11 straight to start the year, a loss against Temple, another 7 straight before they get their next loss.
Yeah, Notre Dame at MSG, shifting to that one was obviously a massive game as well. It was, at the time, the college record for a regular season game at Madison Square Garden in terms of fan attendance. 19,500 fans, sold-out crowd. MSG against Notre Dame, 14th ranked Notre Dame, so a top 25 team that they're playing as well. Looking a little bit deeper into this game in particular, just simply because there's a lot more information on a game like this, it was a big win for Fordham. Fordham trailed in the second half. They grabbed the lead with about 8 minutes left, and they were able to actually hold on for the remainder of those 8 minutes. But 7 of those 8 minutes, the final 7 minutes of the game, Charlie Yelverton actually fouled out of this game. So he had 28 points and 11 rebounds, which is crazy, still with 7 minutes to go in the game. Fouls out. Fordham has to play without their leader down the stretch against Notre Dame. And not only are they're able to hold that lead, they're able to really stay where they were and come out with a win. That's really impressive. That's something that only really good teams do, to survive with being without your best player for a big stretch of time in the second half and still win. That says a lot about the program and about the team and where they were at that time.
Yeah, and I think this is just kind of the thing about this team, that we're honoring Charlie Yelverton today, but this team had so many pieces.
Yes.
And it was the team that made them so great. And every great team needs their best player, needs that kind of player. And Charlie Yelverton was that leader, was that player for this team. But even when, Yelverton fouls out, as it says, I'm looking at this New York Times article from 1971, really
yes,
cool.
Yes, yeah. Archive, which is super cool to see.
And he fouls out, scores 75-73. So the Fordham only has a 2-point lead at this point when he comes out of the game. The team comes together and they're able to hold on to this win. I think that, it says a lot about how it wasn't just one player, everyone who stepped on the floor for them.
It was definitely everybody. It was a team effort in that one. And they also had to guard Austin Carr, who was the second leading scorer in the country for Notre Dame. He averaged 37 points per game heading into that day. He scored 29, which obviously sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but when he's averaging 37, that's a successful defensive game plan against a guy like that. Digger actually, I read this, I think it was in that article as well. Opened up with a zone, switched to a man-to-man, finished with kind of a full-court press. So really tried and use different defenses throughout the game to really throw a lot of different things at the Irish. And that game plan actually worked really well for Fordham. They improved to 19-1 with the win, and then followed that up with another big one against Rutgers. At Rutgers, another good team, another New York area kind of team. I think this one was also important because it showed that after the Notre Dame game, which was the biggest win of the year against a top 25 team, there was no letdown. There was no letdown from that. They got right back up, got right back to work, and was able to go on the road and beat a good Rutgers team. Another big win.
Huge win. And, they have all this momentum, and they come out of the Rutgers game, and I know we're going to talk to it, but they go back to Madison Square Garden.
Back to MSG.
And they play the best team I think they play all year.
Yes.
And it's, number 2 Marquette. So they had all the momentum going into that game, play the best team they play all year, and it's a close one, Sam.
Yeah, it's certainly a close one in that Marquette battle, squaring off with the second-ranked team in the nation. They finished with an undefeated regular season. They did not lose in the regular season. They would eventually lose, I believe it was in the Final Four. It might have been the Elite Eight, but it was in the NCAA tournament. It was their only loss of the year, which shows how dominant that team was. There were a number of NBA players on that roster that you could go through, but Fordham held their own, absolutely held their own. It was overtime loss, 85-80 in that one. We talked about Fordham being a little bit undersized. They were certainly undersized in that matchup, as Marquette had some big-time athletes, some big-time guys, but they were able to really battle with this team. Charlie Yelverton, foul trouble a little bit again in that one. Marquette did a good job getting him into foul trouble, making him spend some time on the bench, which is really what they needed. But Fordham able to keep the score tied in regulation, push the game to overtime, and then just fell short in OT. But another game that I think shows that the Notre Dame win was not a fluke. Their record was not a fluke. They were continuing to kind of prove themselves and show that they can hang around and be and beat the best teams in the country. I mean, they were right there with number 2 Marquette.
And that Marquette team has 3 NBA players.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Fordham, Charlie Yelverton going to the Trailblazers. They had talent of NBA talent without a question, but this is a team that, had 3 NBA players. And it was a tough team to go up against. Their tallest player, I'm not sure if I'm saying this name right, but Jim Chones, he was 6'11", averaged 18 points per game, touch under 12 rebounds per game. I mean, that's a tough matchup for a Fordham team that was a little smaller.
6'11" in 1971 as well.
And I think
that guy must have been a giant.
I have the roster up right now, but the tallest player on Fordham was Paul Griswold. He was 6'8", but he didn't play a lot.
Yeah,
he was not really part of the rotation that much.
Yeah.
Next tallest was 6'6". So they were undersized for a game like that, and to only lose by 5, I mean, great coaching, and it just says so much about how good this team was. Certainly,
and finishing up the year, Fordham 4 more victories, improving to 24-2. Another victory at MSG against Manhattan. A really cool matchup there between the 2 Bronx teams, Fordham and Manhattan. And then it was on to the NCAA tournament, where they would take on Furman, and they destroyed Furman. They took them down very easily in the first round, a 30-point victory behind a 30-point performance from Charlie Yelverton. He finished the game with 30 points, 19 rebounds. That was able to secure their spot in the Sweet 16. So the NCAA tournament was smaller at this time, so Fordham with a win in the first round was on to the Sweet 16, and it was Villanova. And I think this is very fitting. We talk a lot about the team this year and Kyle Neptune and where he is now at Villanova, the former Fordham coach. And, it's a rivalry, I guess, if you can call it that, although they don't play very often. But certainly in this game, these 2 teams were going at it. In the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16, another battle, another really tough battle to a team that would make the Final Four, would match up against UCLA in the Final Four. Before their season ended for Villanova, but an 85-75 victory for the Villanova Wildcats over Fordham in that Sweet 16 game. And actually very interesting that Villanova turns out their run to the Final Four and their Final Four appearance was vacated due to Howard Porter, which was the most outstanding player for them, signed an ABA contract during the season. So that was against the rules, which led to this decision to vacate the Final Four appearance. But that had no impact on what happened on the court, as he was a very talented player.
I had 25 points against Fordham in that game.
Yeah.
And 8 rebounds as well. All 5 starters for Villanova get into double figures. Charlie Yelverton, he leads the way for Fordham. He has 32 points, 9 rebounds, so close to a double-double for him.
So
perfect,
I think
8 for 8 at the line.
So did Yelverton, can you see how many fouls? I think he might have had 5 or maybe 4. He
3 personal fouls.
Oh, okay, 3. Okay, not
Maynard
as many.
4, Howard Porter had 5.
Okay, so he fouled out. Yelverton had how many points?
He had 32.
Man.
32 points. He went 12 for 28 from the field, 8 for 8 at the line.
And that's why ultimately he's a guy that you look at as, one of the best players in Fordham history, because not only was he dominant during this regular season, but he stepped up in these bigger games.
Yeah.
He stepped up when it mattered most. He had a very good game against Furman in the first round, but like I said, 30 points, 32 against Villanova. He did everything that he could for this team. It just, unfortunately, every team and every season comes to an end at some point, and for Fordham, it was at this point in the Sweet 16. They did wrap up their season with a win over 6th-ranked South Carolina in the East Regional Consolation Game. So this is another thing that the March Madness no longer does, but a consolation game that they're able to play, beating, the 6th-ranked team in the country, nothing to shrug off. That's a huge win, too, for them. And that put Fordham 7th in the final AP poll, which is just kind of a perfect ending there in terms of moving up in the standings and being that high for the end of the year, showing, really how dominant, how successful, and how historic this season was for Fordham.
And, I find this really interesting, this game specifically. Fordham trails at 6 at the end of the first half. They outscore South Carolina 58-42 in the second half to win by 10 points, 100-90. They had 4 players with 20-plus points in that game. Charlie Yelverton leading the way with 25 points, but they had 3 other players that had 20-plus points. Bill Maynard, Jack Burek, and Ken Charles, all with 20-plus points. So, they really exploded in this one. I'd like to, contact Joe DeBerry. Maybe he has a stat on this, but how many other times in Fordham history have 4 players scored 20-plus points? So maybe this team has done it before. We don't really have the box scores, but I'd be interested to find that out.
I'm sure at some point this team did it earlier in the season, just with how dominant they were.
You know what I want to see
wins.
too? Charlie Yelverton was 8 for 8 against Villanova from the line. He was 3 for 3 against Villanova at the line. I would like to see if he missed a free throw in the
NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
You tell? You have the box score.
I have the box score. I'm looking at Furman right now. 8 for 14 against Furman, but still sounded great from the line. Perfect 8 for 8 the next game. He had 30 points against Furman in that game. So 30 points twice, 20-plus points once.
That's incredible.
Really, really killed it. And, I mentioned the 20-plus point thing. They had 4 players, 18-plus points against Furman.
That's incredible. Charlie Yelverton, he was in modern day terms, he was that guy for Fordham. And
you know what? Before the 3-point line, harder to,
Yeah.
I know it's a different era. You look at, Pete Maverich's stats. He's the NCAA all-time leading scorer. I know someone's kind of close to him. I'd have to look if he's no longer first. But, he averaged 3 years at LSU. He had 45-plus points a game every
it's
year.
Crazy. So 23 points per game and 12 rebounds per game for Yelverton. He led the way for Fordham. One of 3 team captains, Jack Burek, was the leading assist man. He had 5.6 assists per game, so he was a big facilitator for the Rams. And Bill Maynard, who averaged 14 points per game for Fordham. And then one more guy that's, you can mention this whole team, but another guy that's definitely worth mentioning is Ken Charles, just a sophomore, averaged 15 points per game. Really stepped up and was a leader for this team going forward past this year, but played a big role in this 70-71 team as
well. I know it's specific 1970-71 team, but we did talk to the broadcasters from the 1973 game against Notre Dame, that upset at Rose Hill Gym, and Ken Charles was on that team, and he kind of learned a lot, and got a big upset against Digger Phelps, who's the head coach on the other sidelines for that team. He ended his career 20 points per game. He averaged 24 his last season. This team had some of the best talent that any Fordham team has had, and it's it's an obvious answer because they won 26 games. But you think about what Ken Charles became at the end of his career. He was great already as a sophomore. Charlie Yelverton. This team was very deep and great.
That was a great conversation there, talking about breaking down this entire 1970-71 team and schedule for Fordham. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have the current head coach of the Fordham Rams, Keith Urgo. He sat down with myself and Ryan Gregoire talking about Fordham basketball in 1971 and also what it means to the program to this day. We'll also have Ed Cole coming in the studio in a little bit as well. But that and more right after this break.
Hi, I'm Michael Calamari, reminding you to tune into New York's longest-running sports call-in show, One-on-One. Catch all the breaking sports news, hot takes, inside scoops from our beat reporters, and interviews with people around the world of sports. One-on-One airs every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on YouTube Live, and once again at night from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. on 90.7 FM. Want more One-on-One? Catch our Wednesday edition of the show, One-on-One Nightly from 8:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Twitter and YouTube Live. Join the conversation and tune in to One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show.
Join now with current head coach Keith Ergo. And coach, it's fitting that in midst of this great season that you guys are having, that Fordham is honoring the 1970-71 team. So right off the bat, I just want to go into, at your time at Fordham coming into it, what did you know about this team? And now that you've been the head We're joined now with current head coach Keith Ergo. And coach, it's fitting that in midst of this great season that you guys are having, that Fordham is honoring the 1970-71 team. So right off the bat, I just want to go into, at your time at Fordham coming into it, what did you know about this team? And now that you've been the head coach, been a part of this program for about 2 years now, what do you know now?
Yeah, you know what? I've known a good amount about the team just because, PJ Carlissimo and obviously Digger Phelps. I grew up a Notre Dame fan. David Rivers played for Digger Phelps at Notre Dame, and I was always in love with David Rivers. He was my favorite player in college when I was growing up, and my father's an alum, so you hear about the team a lot, and then obviously last year when you take over, everybody's hoping and wishing that eventually Fordham basketball gets back to that glory. So you hear some things here and there. You obviously hear about players like Charlie Yelverson and Kenny Charles and PJ. So heard enough to know. But after doing a little bit more research, it's pretty impressive what they were able to accomplish.
Now, what did that 1970-71 team mean to Fordham University, and how much pride do you take in your program being compared to it with the success this year?
Yeah, I don't know if you can compare us to it. I mean, they went to the NCAA tournament. We got a long way to go, but it's camaraderie, right? It brought the university together. I mean, obviously, 19,000 fans at Madison Square Garden, and they upset. I think it was Notre Dame and in an unbelievable game. So, the community at large, the student body rallies around the administration, the board of trustees. Everybody rallies around, athletics. So, it's a great couple of hours when you're playing in an incredible environment that brings the community together, and there's something to be excited about, right? So, I think it's an incredible honor to be at the helm and to have the opportunity to bring the student body together along with the alumni base and get everybody excited about the institution through basketball. It's pretty remarkable.
Now, that was a team that established a culture. As you continue to do that as your time as the head coach, how important is that aspect to have around the program?
Yeah, I mean, the standard, as we call it, it's incredibly important. We're looking for sustainable success. We're not looking for just a one-hit wonder. We don't want to just win this year. We want to win for several years. And in order to do that, it's more important that you create your standard of excellence, which we feel like we've done a pretty good job over the course of the last 2 years. And we think it's headed in the right direction. And it's really important that you have some upperclassmen that adhere to that standard and the younger guys can follow their lead. And right now we have that.
There are talking about some of the parallels, one of them being the buy-in of the student body. That's something that's been really felt this year and obviously was felt in the past with that 1970 and 71 team. How important was that for that program back then, and how important is it for your program now to feel like you have all the students really behind your back there?
It means everything. And I know for them, it was probably incredible to see the home crowds in Rose Hill. And obviously, they had an opportunity to play at the Garden and sold out that crowd. And, there's nothing quite like it. And when Rose Thrill, as we're calling it, and the Shirtless Herd get active, it's pretty remarkable, the energy it brings. And you just feel it on campus, right? If you're able to pull out some victories here and there with the crowd being as energized as it is, they're loving it. on campus, you feel the buzz, and it just creates this kind of excitement and energy. You just feel like you got to work a little extra harder each and every day because you don't want to let them down.
Now, you mentioned selling out MSG. Is that something that potentially is on your bucket list at your time at Fordham?
Oh, there's no question. There's nothing quite like Madison Square Garden, So, my time at the Big East and even the Big Ten, I had an opportunity to play at the Garden several times, and it's the Mecca, man. There's nothing quite like playing a game in Madison Square Garden, and for the kids, it's a great experience, right? So, if we have the opportunity to do that, which we'd love to, I know Ed Cole and our board of trustees, as well as President Tetlow, they're looking out for us. They want us to play, some games in Madison Square Garden, the Barclays. So anytime we have the opportunity to do something like that, it's fantastic for our university. It's fantastic for our players.
What's the message you plan on giving your players ahead of Saturday on just the importance of the ceremony, on the importance of that team to Fordham? I'm just curious, what's the message to the team about that?
Yeah, quite honestly, we're focused on the game tonight in Loyola, but and we'll work on that maybe Friday and Saturday. But I know there's a fantastic event down in the city that I look forward to getting a chance to spend time with a lot of those guys and Coach Phelps, who I admire obviously greatly. So we'll spend some time with them and talk a little bit about our team. But right now, focused on the game tonight, and then we'll think about that stuff come Friday. But I will definitely. Communicate with them the significance of that team, what it meant to the institution, and what our current program has the opportunity to do on the heels of them as well.
Coach, appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. Go Rams.
You're listening to WFUV, New York.
Welcome back to One on One, a special edition honoring the 1970-71 Fordham men's basketball team. I'm Sam Davis here with Mike Calamari. Pleased to be joined by Ed Cole, Fordham athletic director. Ed, really thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun hanging with you guys, so I appreciate it.
First of all, I want to just take me through the kind of the initial stages of planning this ceremony and what went into the decision to honor this 71 team.
Yeah, so first of all, as you both know, I was named AD February 19 at 21. So I've only been AD 2 years, so I actually kind of missed a little bit of the window of their actual 50th anniversary, which would have been 2021. And of course, COVID hit us pretty hard. So it was something we needed to unfortunately postpone. So we're a couple of years behind. But I think it honestly has lined up kind of perfectly in terms of the type of season we're having. As you see, obviously, some comparisons in terms of the number of wins and obviously the energy level and a rookie head coach, Keith Ergo, the way Digger Phelps was a rookie head coach 52 years ago. And it's something we wanted to do. Even as soon as I started at Fordham University, if I had a nickel for everybody that's brought up this 70-71 team and what it meant to our alumni, to our student body, to the city, and making the Sweet 16, So it was a no-brainer to honor them. So in October, I reached out to Tom Pipich. He lives up in Pittsburgh, one of our players, and he usually comes to our Duquesne game. We play up there. I said, Tom, let's get the whole team together. Let's pick a weekend. I wanted to do a February weekend. I wanted to do a national TV game, which it is today. As you all know, it's USA Network, which is great. So, and we had to also complete the jersey honoring the jersey retirement of Charlie Elverton, which also was supposed to take place a couple years ago. Didn't happen because he lives in Italy, so it was a little challenging getting him back in the country and finding the right time. So it all has worked out today. So you'll see Charlie Wise jersey hanging from the rafters where it belongs, one of our greatest of all time, NBA player. And we'll also honor this team, which is wonderful. Digger Phelps is here. We saw him last night. Coach is extremely excited and emotional and passionate about this team. And as you all know, which I definitely did not plan for, as much as I love to plan, and I'm a big-time planner, the team is obviously at 22 wins, and we go for number 23 today in a very packed and loud and student crazy Rose Hill Gymnasium, or I should say Rose Thrill Gymnasium.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be really exciting game, and just to have the atmosphere around the halftime. You talk about how much it meant for a lot of people to have this halftime ceremony, have this Charlie Elverton's name go up in the rafters. What do you think made this 1970-71 team so special outside of their court success?
So it sounds like to me, which kind of I throw it back to you all representing the student population, it sounds like the campus just erupted in 70-71. So they literally sold out Madison Square Garden when they played Notre Dame and Marquette back-to-back Thursday nights at MSG. And it sounds like the entire student population rushed to the city for what became a huge party, a huge victory. And I see the same similarities. I think our campus has completely gotten behind this team. The student energy and enthusiasm has been fantastic. You've seen my quotes. It's either led to a certain amount of points or defensive stops, or it's even led to even victories in terms of that home court. Coaches do not want to play there. You heard Travis Ford say that when he was here. You heard Coach Martin from UMass say that when he was here. Coach Schmidt, we hadn't beaten Bonaventure in 16 years here at Rose Hill Gymnasium. He's like, this is a different place, different campus, different university. He said he didn't recognize where he was. And I think that's kudos to the student population, the students. That school spirit, that school pride, it's contagious. And I think it even motivates the players. I think you've seen those quotes. They love the students. They're jumping in the student section. So I give kudos back to all of you in this campus because they've erupted. I think that's the similarity for what I'm seeing from 70-71. And naturally, teams winning and success on the court. It's been kind of a perfect match right now.
So you kind of mentioned some of the parallels between the current team and the team 50 years ago. There seems to be a lot of them between the 70 and 71 group. What are the biggest similarities that you see? You mentioned Digger Phelps, first-year head coach, versus obviously Keith Ergo, first-year head coach. But what are some of the other similarities that you see between those two programs?
I think the other biggest similarity in terms of style of play, because that 70-71 team didn't have a lot of size. You'll see them all today. It's not the biggest group of men. I think they played a tough style of basketball, a physical style of basketball. I think you're seeing us play a tremendous amount of defense right now. That's obviously Keith Ergo's style, but it's really been bought into and established by our team. And I think that toughness, I think that swagger, I think that attitude has a lot of similarities between these two teams. I think that's kind of New York City basketball. Whether you're a Knicks fan in this city, everybody talks about the 94 Knicks and Oakley and Xavier McDaniel and Anthony Mason. They just love the identity that group had. It was so tough. I think that's what's being loved right now by our young men and our team. And I think that was a style of play in 70-71 where they just were fearless. Were not intimidated, and they took it to some of the highest powers in the nation. And let's be honest, we don't have some of the resources or facilities of St. Louis or Dayton or VCU. And, we go in there and we fight, and these kids have a tremendous amount of chemistry and culture, and they're pulling for each other. Coach is playing 11 players. They all understand their role and responsibility. And that's a lot of cliche words, especially in your sports media business. But that's not easy to really establish. And especially for a rookie head coach like Coach Ergo, I could not be more impressed and more pleased with their success thus far.
So you talked about it being kind of the right timing, how it timed up with the success of the team this season, and then obviously 1970-71 being one of those special years. How important do you think it is to be able to honor school's history in athletics, and then being able to do that obviously at the right timing with this team doing so well?
I think it's everything. I think in terms of, I talked a lot about planning here in my first 2 years on the job, and whether it was Kyle Neptune, now it's Keith Ergo. What kind of program do we want? What's the plan? What's the vision? Who do we want to be? How do we get there? And how do we work together in terms of getting the entire village, getting the entire alignment together, right? I talked a lot about whether that's the board of trustees, whether that's the president of the university. I talked a lot about the student body here today. The alignment that we're all in this together. It's not, it's not just a solo act. And I think, the ability to also pay respect to the traditions and history. I think we all talk about the future. We're always stressed about tomorrow. What can we be better? How can we be better? What can we do differently? How do we strategize? But it's also truly paying respect for our history. And I think even for our current team, they just shot around. They're having breakfast right now with the 1970-71 team, understanding who came before them, what their career was, what it meant to them, how important it was in their lives, whether they met their spouse, their partners, their friendships. It's truly it's a dual path of respecting and honoring the tradition and history, but continuing to advance in the future for us.
That's a great point, and I'm curious to see what you think about the fact that, I will say for the two of us learning about this team and for current, basketball players, whether it be or athletes in general, or even just students, learning about this team through the ceremony today, how important is that, do you think, for Fordham as a whole and for the current students to kind of really just embrace this rich history of the program?
I think it's everything.
Yeah.
I think it's everything. I know we've had a large gap here of success. I think often, that kind of perception becomes reality, right, in terms of the distances we've had of success. And we all know the number of A-10 wins we have this year, and we've never had that in 28 years in the A-10. We haven't been in the tournament since 92. There's a lot of gaps here. So if you try to think of the immediate history, it doesn't feel so great, right? There's not a lot of pride there. And whether students were here or not, obviously the students were not here throughout the last 30 years, but that's kind of inherited, right, from classes before. You guys can talk about your experience as students here. So the ability to educate them on the past, celebrate this wonderful season now, hopefully that's contagious for the next incoming freshman class, and then the next freshman class. And now those students are truly engaged in a part of our program and are having the full experience here. I always say this, and I know it can be a little bit long, so I want to keep me brief, but if you didn't go to a game as a student, you ain't coming to a game as an alum. It's just facts. Why would you do that?
It's a great point. It really is a great point. And more to that, you think about everything we've been reading about this team, this 1970-71 team, they were selling out everything, whether it's the Rose Hill Gymnasium or if it's Madison Square Garden, 19,000 fans. Now the Rose Hill Gym Rose Thrill starting to sell out. The student section, we've talked to a lot of alumni, different people have been around the program for a while. This is probably the best they've seen it maybe ever, or as, since you go back to the 70-71 team. How great is that to have the fans back and that energetic? And it probably means so much more to have the fans all packing this gym for the ceremony.
It's everything. And I say this not just a matter of the school experience, the whole experience on campus and the buzz, because I know that's contagious. You don't even realize the impact it has on alumni. Because alumni coming to games, obviously they have a job, they have a family, they have their responsibilities. And for them to be able to pretend or go back to their college days for a couple of hours while being in that gym, that's what they're looking for. That's the best time, right? The best years of your life in theory. And the students drive that. It's not the alums, not the donors, it's not, the family, whatever. It's the students in terms of their energy, and that's contagious in this gym. And yes, the alums have started to come back and they're engaging more, which is wonderful, and we want to continue to focus on that. But the students have driven that. And I think that, to me, is everything in terms of our culture environment. That's what college, that's what the university is all about in terms of our experience. And I feel like it's really reminded everybody of some glory days, and tying back to your early question about the history and tradition.
Ed, I love hearing this because obviously we, here at WFUV in general, are obviously very passionate about the athletic program here, and obviously you are as well. I've got one more question for you here on just the ceremony today, in a couple hours. You guys had dinner. It was dinner last night celebrating the team, and that obviously continues into the game today. But what are you most looking forward to from today and from the game and from the ceremony? Is there anything in particular that you're really excited for?
I've been the last 6 weeks or whatever it's been since the holiday break when students have returned. I'm obviously close to this in terms of a daily basis and drinking the Kool-Aid, whatever cliche you want to use. And you know this, guys. We've given away burritos, T-shirts, hip-hop performers, gift cards. You name it, we would give it away for you. Tell me what you need to get you to a game, and we should just hand out cash. I would do that. But
Ed Cole at the door handing out cash, huh?
But you all know, because you're savvy and smart individuals, when the team started clicking, they're like, all right, they knew when it was the right time. This team's for real. They have credibility. They're playing well. Like it automatically kind of organically happened, which is the best way. And yes, we obviously have some great leaders in that student section, the Shirtless Herd group, and the way they have kind of unified the entire audience, what's in that chance. It's remarkable. That energy, I'm blown away every time I walk into that gym and see that student section right now. It's been a long time, gentlemen. It's been a long time since I've seen that gym that way. I've been here almost 4 years. I have not seen that gym like that. I had less. So that's great. And to honor the tradition history, to retire a jersey number today, and for our team to really be competitive the way they are, I couldn't ask for more. And it really is the perfect synergy for our program right now.
Fordham Athletic Director Ed Cole. Ed, I know you're super busy over the last couple of days, but we appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Totally my pleasure anytime, and I appreciate your support. I know you've done a great job in promoting this program and getting the students behind us. And as I say in the startup company here, our 2.0 year 2, I appreciate all you guys continue to push and help us.
Thank you so much, Ed. On the other side of the break, it's the founder of One-on-One, Malcolm Moran. Stick around for that interview and more coming up next.
Hi, this is Michael Kay, WFUV class of 1982. WFUV is your home for all things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to our Saturday show, One-on-One. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
Welcome back to One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show, a special edition honoring the 1970-71 Fordham men's basketball team, Sam Davis with Thomas Io. Now pleased to be joined by Malcolm Moran, 1975 Fordham grad, founder of this very show, One-on-One. Malcolm, really grateful having you on. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm just glad I can be here.
Love it. Well, Malcolm, you not necessarily at Rose Hill at the time of the 70-71 team, but you were in attendance to watch them defeat St. John's at Madison Square Garden. What was that experience like for you, being there firsthand and seeing that team?
Well, that was part of the build-up process, and as significant a victory as that was, because it was, I believe, 21 years or so until the Rams beat St. John's again. There were only about 7,500 people in the Garden on a Saturday afternoon. The emotion and the feeling around the team was definitely building, but it wasn't until the 18th and the 25th, so really the equivalent of this time 51 years ago, that Notre Dame, which had defeated UCLA earlier that season, came in with Austin Carr, who was one of the best players in the country, and Fordham beat Notre Dame. And then the next Thursday, the 25th, Marquette comes in unbeaten. The game goes to overtime and is one of the most memorable college games ever played in Garden history. Both those games, Notre Dame and Marquette, were not only sellouts, but hard sellouts. I was actually turned away from the Notre Dame game and didn't even try to get into the Marquette game. And that's when Fordham really had a hold on the city that's really hard to explain now, because that was a pre-Big East, pre-ESPN era when Northeast schools were just kind of fractured into their own little fiefdoms. And Fordham just emerged and was all anybody was talking about for that period of about 2 to 3 weeks.
So, Malcolm, I want to get your perspective. You talk about Austin Carr was a tremendous player at Notre Dame, but Fordham had their own guy, Charlie Yelverton, and a lot of people will recognize him as one of the 5 greatest players in the history of the program. What was it like for you? Obviously, again, you were not a student yet, but to have a player like that on your team that you could root for every single night.
Well, he was a nationally prominent player. And you know, the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that Ken Charles, who wound up having an excellent NBA career, was a sophomore on that team. And he was also an important presence. And so I think part of what delayed the emotional run-up was that to people in the game, there were high expectations for that team. The Rams had been 10 and 15 the year prior. To the casual fan, there wasn't a lot of discussion going into that season about Fordham being prominent. One thing I do remember, though, years later, when Jack Rowan, who was the great former Columbia coach, the last coach to lead the Lions into the NCAA tournament in '68, was working with the New York Times at the Final Four. He used to do these wonderful think pieces where he would analyze the 2 finalists in the Monday paper. And so years later, I'm at a Final Four event with Jack Rowan, and he was talking about a telephone conversation he had in the summer of '70 with Bob Knight, who was then at West Point. And Jack said that Knight told him, looking ahead to the following season, and this is a quote from Jack, quoting Knight, "My grandmother could win 20 games at Fordham next season with the talent they have coming back." So if you go by that measure, Digger did 6 games better than Bob Knight's grandmother would have.
Love it, Malcolm. You mentioned getting turned away from the Fordham win over Notre Dame and not even really trying for the Marquette game. First of all, how frustrated were you, or maybe disappointed were you not to be able to make that Notre Dame game, obviously with them winning? And then I guess second of all, what does it say about kind of the vibe surrounding the team during those couple of weeks that they're actually turning fans away from the Garden?
Well, in getting turned away from the Notre Dame game, I actually learned an important lesson, because the day before I had been at the Garden because Maurice Richard, the Hockey Hall of Famer with the Montreal Canadiens, was making an appearance at Jerry Cosby's, the store next in the Garden Rotunda at the time, and was signing autographs. And so I went to get Maurice Richard's autograph, stopped by the box office, and they had tickets for tomorrow night. But in those days, the New York City Public Schools had GO tickets, which you could get a discount for day of game purchases. So I made the decision that I would quickly regret, to pass on the sure thing of getting the ticket on Wednesday afternoon and waiting for Thursday to get the discounted ticket. 51 years later, 52 years later, my apologies, lesson is still learned.
So, Malcolm, again, you mentioned 52 years later since that season. Here we are now in 2023, and the Fordham Rams won 20 games again. And there's a lot of parallels that are being drawn between this current Fordham team and that 71 team. If you were to dissect it a little bit between your time back then and maybe the difference of today's college game, what's the one thing both of those teams really have in common that is sort of driving this machine?
Well, a big part of it, and keep in mind, I'm watching from a distance from my perch in central Indiana, but certainly a big part of it is this. I mean, those teams play together. Both teams have outstanding talent, but there's a certain amount of sacrifice that is necessary for a group to play for each other. And I would say the same thing about what the women are doing. And what makes this year so much fun from a distance is that the 1971 group didn't have a women's team on a parallel track because it didn't exist. Title IX had not yet been passed. I mean, I realize that it sounds and feels like we're talking about either the Jurassic or Cretaceous eras, but that's how long ago it was. I mean, the entire structure has changed. But to answer the question, the willingness to sacrifice and play for each other is an extremely admirable quality that I would attach to both groups.
Here with Malcolm Moran, the founder of One on One, currently director of the Sports Capital Journalism Program at IUPUI, and of course, as well, the executive director of the Basketball Writers Association. So, with your background in basketball now, how important, obviously being in New York, following that Fordham team in 70-71, how important was that team for you personally in your journey of kind of working in sports and really falling in love with the game of basketball?
You are really pulling at the heartstrings here because no, what I can tell you is that, and I couldn't have known this at the time, but there were three groups that really shaped how I wanted to learn about the game and eventually the industry, and then being a part of everything at FUV and the RAM. Those three groups were the 1965 Princeton Tigers when Bill Bradley was their leader, and they got to the Final Four in Portland. I remember staying up late. This is when the Final Four was on a syndicated network, and it was like this secret thing. If you had a friend that was interested in the Final Four, it was almost like you were part of a cult. I mean, it wasn't the mainstream event that it's become over the years. So it was the 65 Princeton Tigers, the 68 Columbia Lions. And I promise, since I didn't know what you were going to ask, I couldn't have had time to look this up. But Jim McMillan, Dave Newmark, Roger Walazik, Bruce Metz, Billy Ames. I mean, I can still tell you that who was part of the 68 Lions. And then the 71 Rams. That became even more personal and special because I had applied to Fordham. I had been accepted, listening to games that season on WFUV and realizing, hey, wait a minute, students can do this. Students can be part of broadcasts in games in New York City. I mean, it was as if this whole world was opened up to me through what that team accomplished and the ones that came before it. Who knew that this, I believe, will be my 42nd Final Four this year? I mean, if you had told the 17-year-old freshman version of me that I would be talking to you, talking about going to a 42nd Final Four, I would have suggested that whatever that is you're smoking, you really need to stop.
Oh my goodness. Well, I do want to pick your brain a little bit more. You were to name the 5 greatest Fordham players in the history of the program, who would they be and why? I know this one's tough too.
Well, I'll take some liberties here and say I'll start with Ann Gregory because I don't recall many stat lines that include 1,999 career rebounds. Beyond that, I mean, obviously, Ed Conlon has to be on any list. You mentioned Charlie Alberton. I mentioned Ken Charles, Darrell Brown, who made the shot a little over 50 years ago to beat Notre Dame. And even though he played in an era when there wasn't quite the same level of success that the 71 team had, when you think of the people that he was going up against, Tom McMillan of Maryland, Maurice Lucas of Marquette, Danny Traylor of South Carolina. I mean, the way the schedule was set up then, Darrell was in a lot of cases facing either a first team All-American or pretty close to that many times that he went out there. So Darrell obviously has to be in that mix. And I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody prominent. But I mean, you can fill in the blanks for me.
I'll give one for you. More recent, Bryant Dunston. Does that name ring a bell?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Definitely put him in there.
Yes. I mean, and again, that was, I mean, there was, I believe it was his junior season that was kind of a surprise breakthrough. And then the next year, people were waiting for them. I mean, the surprise was gone, and that year's team didn't have quite the same level of success. But yes, I mean, he did very well.
Malcolm, going back to 70 and 71, there was obviously a lot of notable games that year, a lot of big wins for that team between St. John's, Notre Dame, and then, of course, thinking second-ranked Marquette right down to the wire, all at the Garden. Which game for you out of those do you remember the most or stands out for you the most looking back on it now?
Well, the Marquette game, I mean, the fact that John Condon, who was the longtime public address announcer at the Garden for both college basketball and the Knicks, including the Knicks championship seasons, at the end of that game, he said this far more eloquently than my memory will give you, but he basically asked the sellout crowd for a round of applause for both teams for creating one of the great games in the history of the Garden. And I remember in real time learning of that and thinking, well, he must be right. I mean, this has to be one of the great games in the history of the Garden. So, I mean, that was certainly a highlight. But I remember during that time, and this was an experience that, again, who knew in the moment, but in that winter and spring, Marty Glickman, the Hall of Fame broadcaster who wound up being an enormous influence on several generations of FUV students, had a late night, weeknight talk show on WNEW AM, 1130. I believe it was on at 11 o'clock at night. And I listened religiously. And the reason I say that was the link to one-on-one is the way that he treated listeners and the fact that it was a real conversation. And if there were different viewpoints, they were respectfully given. And really, that was what I had in mind almost as a template several years later when we were talking about trying to do the same thing. The reason I mentioned Marty is that the Saturday after the Thursday night that they beat Notre Dame, so now they're riding high, they just beat Austin Carr, who had beaten UCLA. Fordham played at Rutgers in the old place, which was a very cramped, tough place to play. And now the secret is out. And so the Rams have become a target. And I couldn't tell you the score, but Fordham won a close and very competitive game. And the next week, early in the week, I remember Marty saying that in a lot of ways, even though it didn't get the same level of national attention, coming off the high of the Notre Dame victory, to be able to beat a good Rutgers team in a very tough environment showed as much or more to him as beating Notre Dame with a full house behind you in the Garden. And I remember thinking, wow, I mean, he's right. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And that was part of my education. I mean, looking beyond the obvious and the games that get the big buildup, and realizing we're talking about 18 to 22-year-old college students who undergo the same emotional peaks and valleys that everybody else does. And recognizing the achievement of that Rutgers game is something that has stayed with me in the observations I've made about different teams over the years.
Awesome insight there from Malcolm Moran, the founder of One on One, Fordham grad, WFUV Sports, of course. Malcolm, thank you so much for being with us. We will be right back with more from a special edition of One on One celebrating the 1970-71 Fordham men's basketball team.
Hi, this is Mike Breen, WFUV class of 1983. WFUV is the flagship station of Fordham Athletics with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to Saturday one-on-one. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV Sports.
Welcome back to a very special edition of One on One, honoring the 1970-71 Fordham men's basketball team. We are now joined by the leading scorer, the team leader of that group. His number 34 will be retired during the game today against URI. It's Charlie Yelverton. Charlie, thank you so much for being with us.
Bang!
And Mike Breen, the Mike Breen bang.
Love it. What a way to start. First of all, I just want to, get your thoughts being back here with your teammates. Just tell me what this experience has been like over the last couple of days.
Emotion. I can't say the word in English.
Emotion's good. That's good.
The word commozione. You could just, be happy crying with the guys. I haven't seen them in so long.
Being around the team and being back on campus Rose Hill Gym, does it bring back any, specific memories of that, season you guys had?
Yeah, the season before, I tell all these athletes, you get better during the summer, off season. That's where you work on the fundamentals and your body running. So I would work out with the football team. Because they weren't on scholarships. They just had a club. It was just a football club. So they weren't like snobs, say it. They were happy just to be together, working out and sweating. So I would like to, pass that kind of feeling to the guys when I came after the summer. Plus, everybody knew Zambetti. The summer, I brought him down to Harlem to play, and the poor brother broke his knee, and we needed him for the beginning of the year. And he busted his chops to get in shape for at least the fifth game, I think. But I felt it was my fault, so I would do the whole workout with the football team. And after we finish, I go do the bleachers to help the elevation. And I was playing down, I would bike from Fordham down to West 4th Street. I play West 4th Street and take guys play there for like the whole day.
Love it. That's awesome to hear about. And you mentioned the summer and kind of growing and becoming better in the summer. You made you had a really solid career in your first few seasons with Fordham, but then you kind of took a jump in both scoring and rebounding in the 70-71 season. What kind of led to that jump? What allowed you to play much better that year?
The team, we were like more organized. Everybody knew each other. We had great peripheral vision that nobody talks about anymore. but with the zone press, we knew our roles, and we just blew out teams. You know, it's a shame we lost to Villanova. I cried in that game, and my friends around my block, they won the bet. They bet that if we lose, I'll be crying. You know, but it was a feeling that you feel like you're dead. And we came back and beat South Carolina, which was a good win for me because Roach and Owens, they were beating. They beat me at the champs when we played the city champs, the finals here at Fordham.
You talk about that, Villanova and the South Carolina game, both of those tournament games. But you go back to the regular season. You guys sell out the Garden. You play Notre Dame there. You also play St. John's there. Just what were those experiences like playing at Madison Square Garden? What were those games like being able to play in that arena against those top teams and coming away with wins?
Well, I was used to the Garden playing. We played in the old Garden against LaSalle, and we lost. So, but it was packed as a high school game. And when we played against Notre Dame, I fouled out, and Billy Maynard said, "We're going to win this for you." And it was a great game. And we lost to Marquette in overtime, which was a great game we had with them. And the whole thing was we lost in overtime because Dean knew how to beat us. He just came down slowly and gave the ball to Jones, and that was it. You couldn't do nothing about that. And then I was really happy finally to beat St. John's because they was like on my nerves because they was like the snobby team in the metropolitan area, really. And all you hear was that all the guys would brag about St. John's.
Charlie, you were, obviously locked in all season long in 70-71, but was there a particular game for you personally where you felt like you were really on, or you were really, kind of scoring at a different rate, or really just had a really special game? Can you look back on any of those that you can think of?
When we played Rochester.
You had 46, I think, right?
Yeah. I was I just knew everything was going to happen. It was my day.
You knew everything was going in when it left the fingers?
Because I was lucky because that's what I say. You gotta work out during the summer. In the summer, I go pick up games, whatever. You just got to hustle for pickup games. And we were playing on asphalt, weren't worrying about getting hurt and all this garbage, And you got to have the attitude like Bill Russell or Bob Cousy. I mean, these players, they were winning, and they weren't acting like hot dogs, dancing and doing all the crazy moves after you score a basket. You haven't won nothing yet. You could do that the last 20 seconds of the NCAA finals maybe, but not during the whole year. You know what I mean? But you got to really appreciate the game more. Plus, I was lucky I had a bunch of guys where we all would go to church. They had a priest to come before the game. And after we won 2 games in a row, it was 4 priests. And then one time it was 7 priests. So I started calling it the magic show,
7 priests, but before the game for meeting with the team?
Unbelievable.
What game was that? Was that Notre Dame, or maybe a combination of both
Notre
Catholic
Dame
schools? Yeah.
Notre Dame, we play against Notre Dame, even St. John's. Everybody, when you win, everybody want to be part of the act. You know what I mean?
So, me and Sam were talking about your schedule. You guys go to UMass, and you play Dr. J at UMass. Do you have any memories from that, and can you just talk about that experience?
Oh, that was a great game. I was telling Digger, I could hold him, and it came, I don't know who fouled out. I don't know if it was Sully or Zambi. So I knew how to hold him, plus with peripheral vision. I anticipate and let him receive the ball out of his range, and we won the game that way. Really, we had basically the same stats: 30 points and 16 rebounds, something like that.
During a game in 1972, you sat on the bench during the national anthem as a protest.
Yeah.
Obviously many years before everything that's happened nowadays.
Yeah, but that was different. I was protesting racism and the Vietnam War.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, what went into that decision,
it happened, it came funny. I had 4 days off and for Easter, so Nixon said he's bringing our boys back home. So I had guys that were that were better than me, so I felt like, wow, I'm really a lucky soul to be playing in the pros, and these poor guys over there risking their lives. So when he said bring back the boys, I thought it was true. And so Easter, I went home and to cheer up the parents, and they all were sad. I said, no, he's still over there. That's a lie. Nixon, this and that. So I had a thing against Nixon, But, that was at that time, It wasn't, I wouldn't have did it if it was, like I told you before, if it was 9/11, I would never, lay down, sit down, or knee down on the national anthem.
And what was the reaction to that, like from your teammates and from people around
Well,
you?
the teammates may believe at that time they may believe they didn't see it.
Wow.
So the coach got fired, and I came in. When they came in, they started booing me. Boo, you shitty communist, this and this and that. And I went and made a super basket, and they started cheering like it didn't happen, So that's the way it is. You win games, people forget quickly.
So after your time at the NBA came to an end, you go overseas and you play some great basketball there. You win a EuroLeague title. Just talk about that experience and different.
Well, I played with a great player. I was lucky. Dino Meneghin. He was the center for the national team, and it's town of Varese. I played there. It's called Ignis. And another great player was Bob Morse. That he played at University of Pennsylvania, and this guy had an outside shot 70%, and there was no 3 line, with no line of 3, we call it linea di tre. My English, you people out there, please excuse my English.
We got
I've been
it.
50 years in Italy, and I got to rephrase my whole mind, really.
So Charlie, focusing back on the ceremony today, when that number 34, goes up into the rafters, what do you think is going to be going through your mind? What are the emotions
I don't
around seeing that?
I don't know. I don't have any idea. Hope I don't break out and start crying like a baby.
Like you were, like Villanova. You don't want to break down like that.
Because the last game, I remember when we played against NYU. They had too much ceremony for me, and it was the last game I knew I was playing here. It was the last time, and like my whole body shook, started crying. It's unbelievable. Throat couldn't talk. I just hope that. If it happens, that's life. What the hell?
Well, that's raw emotion, and that's you, and how much you care about the university and the program for sure.
Oh, I'll tell you a story. You guys are too young for know a famous actress, Ali McGraw. If you ever saw the movie Love Story, and a close friend of mine, Bob Kasu, he was a senior when I was a junior, and they had the love scene where he's flirting with Ali McGraw in the public library. So I didn't know who they were anyway. But Bob was a super fan of Ali McGraw. She was supposed to be the new sex queen and all this stuff. So anyway, we went there, and they just finished the set. And he runs up there without introducing himself, and shakes her hand, and he goes to me, as we coming out, I'm never going to wash this hand for the rest of my life, you know. So anyway, she became famous. So I'm playing with Portland, and we playing against a scrimmage game against Will Chamberlain and Jerry West and Elgin Baylor playing against the Lakers at their place. So the ball is going out of bounds, and you see on the stairs, you see Jack Nicholson, and next to him was Ali McGraw. So I knew I wasn't going to get there in time to save it, but I dove that way so I could come right next to her on her mini dress, you know. I said, "Hey, you remember Charlie Elverton from Fordham?" And she looked at me like I was a piece of shit. It was so funny.
Safe to say she didn't remember you, huh?
Nah, she didn't care.
Charlie Yelverton, before the ceremony to honor number 34 going to the rafters and the 1970-71 team. Thank you so much for taking some time with us.
Pleasure, and God bless all you kids out there.
Thank you so much.
We'll be back with more from the 1970-71 team. Stick around after the break.
Hi, my name is Ryan Rucco, WFUV class of 2008. WFUV is your home for all things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to our Saturday show, One-on-One. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
Welcome back to One-on-One 1970-71 Fordham basketball. We're honoring them here today, Sam Davis, Mike Calamari, and we are now joined by two very special guests here. We got Ken Charles, a sophomore guard at the time, of course, with the 70-71 team, and Jack Burek, the senior guard and one of the captains of the team. Both of you guys, thank you for being here. I guess I'll start with you, Ken. Being a sophomore with this group, what did guys like Jack and some of the captains and some of the leaders help you as a younger player, really hit your stride with this team and have the season that you did?
Well, it's interesting because in the beginning, it's just trying to fit. You come in as a sophomore. Those guys had been together the year before, so they kind of knew each other, and they didn't know my game. So it took a while for it to mesh because I'm a team guy. So I was going to try to do what I need to do, just fit in, because I knew once I got my stride, I'd be able to help the team as much as I could. But it takes a while to just get fit in, let them know you're just coming to be part of the team, not to be the team, and, be a team player. And it took a while. And it's interesting because I thought Digger didn't really have an offense for us till like November. Practice started October 15th, but we didn't have an offense till November because he just wanted to see what everyone could do. And I think that really helped us play well because the offense was geared to most of our strengths.
That's true.
Yeah, and I want to ask you guys just about the start of that season. Jack, we can start with you. 11-game win streak to start that year. So you start off 11-0 before that Temple game. Just what was the buzz around the team, and did you guys expect to start off that hot?
Well, you never expect to start off that because it's the best start in probably history of this tradition-wise of this university. But to be honest with you, we knew we were going to be a good team with the addition of Bart and Kenny particularly, because they were both outstanding players. They just need a little experience. The leadership came from, the three seniors, and that's the way it should have been, and Digger, the coach, and he established the norms like Kenny said. We didn't have any out-of-bounds plays. We had no offensive sets, but we knew every move in this press, and he said, and we bought in, like he said. We had a party at the dormitory arranged by PJ, and it's just like, okay, we like this guy, we're going with him. We have no other choice, but he's got enthusiasm. We know he knows his stuff, but okay, eventually we'll get to the offense, but our game is going to be so much different from everyone else. We pressed the whole game. So the rules played a big effect here. There was no dunking allowed because of the Lou Alcindor rule. But what that did, I don't think it hurt Charlie, maybe Casey even, but that wasn't a big factor. What was a big factor for us was they don't have TV timeouts like they do today. So all those 6'10 and 6'11, some 7-footers we played against, their hind ends were dragging at the end of the game. They weren't going bucket to bucket. They were going top of the key, and they couldn't last the game. And we were conditioned to do just that. So we won a lot of games in the last 10 minutes. And, of course, we were outstanding foul shooters in a history of – this is saying something. In a history of the NCAA basketball tournament, we stand as the greatest free throw shooting team of all time, 22 for 22. Can't get better than that. No one's ever been done. There's thousands of games. So that's a tribute to our team. Casey here, and I got the stats I brought with me. He's a great shooter, especially at the end of the game, as was I. And Billy Maynard was a good shooter, 80%. Charlie. So the game was over. Now, we saw the last game. I don't want, we got to make those shots. Charlton missed the 2 against Loyola and, 1-on-1. You can't miss those shots. So we got to kind of like tighten that up. And I think that was a big factor. The good shooting we had, the development of these guys over the course of the season, because Bart and KC made tremendous contributions, as did Charlie. He was a great player. And Billy Maynard was our defensive guy. I was the point guard that had the ball in my hands 80%, but I had some good choices. Who
a lot of good guys
here.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, when we pressed and we stole the ball to score. We didn't steal the ball just to run offense.
That's a good point.
We stole the ball to score, and every steal, every turnover, we're going to score. We were not pulling it back out waiting. We had shooters, so we got the shooters. We got the ball to the shooters in the open spots. And I think that's why I really love Digger. We had a freewheeling offense. Right. You guys can do this, just do it.
Jack,
Yes.
just following up on, you talking about kind of your role in the team, talking about
my role,
as the point guard, as one of the leaders, like we talked about. How much pride do you take in the fact that you were the leading assist guy, and you were setting up a lot of your teammates and really providing with them good opportunities for them to score the basketball?
Well, let me tell you, that didn't happen overnight. I could score, But I chose to, like Kenny said, we're all team players. I chose in a way, like sacrifice. No, I didn't have the shot that these guys did. But they double teamed these guys. I was free low. Like, I'll give an example. Boston College game. We played, we're losing. I had 19 points in the first half because they didn't guard me. I'd make one cut, I'm open, I made the shot. I was capable of making it. I was a good shooter. Unfortunately, they didn't have three-point shooting back then. If they had, I'd have scored more. But these guys were the scorers. Okay, Charlie, Casey, Bart, who am I missing out?
Sully.
Charlie, obviously he was the leading scorer. But so I chose, and it was smart of me to do that. I'm, in a way, sacrificing myself. My job is to get these guys, and I was a good ball handler. I didn't turn the ball over. And someone had to sacrifice a little bit. Well, apparently he did too.
I think the other thing with Jack being a point guard, that you don't see a lot of. You didn't have to worry. We threw the ball inbounds, and everyone came into their position. You weren't worried about somebody taking the ball from him. He brought the ball up. He got us into our offense, and that's how we rolled. I mean, we rolled like a team. I mean,
absolutely.
By the time we got to about our 12th or 14th game, I thought the turning point of our season was after our first loss in Temple. We went up to UMass and beat Julius and them, and we beat them. It wasn't close. We just beat them in their building, people going crazy, and we just beat them. And I remember the silence on the bus coming back, only because I think we were all realizing we were pretty good.
Absolutely.
And silence after beating a team like
yes,
that?
Right, yeah.
Wow.
Being Dr. J.
The bus ride, everyone was
call
just
it
so
the
quiet.
cage.
Yeah, you could just figure that everyone. Yeah,
we knew. No, we know. We were pretty good. So they was completely sold out. It was a little place like Fordham at the time. They eventually got, okay, you remember, the students there had half the crowd. They were there at 2 o'clock. We weren't even there yet.
That's right.
And they were attacking us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like students do. And then the rest of the people came.
Attacking you guys?
Yeah. Well, verbally.
Okay, yeah, of course, yeah.
They called it the cage.
Yeah,
they called it the cage.
Got it.
And so, but what I think, seriously, that I think we knew a little bit earlier than that 12th game that we were going to be good. And here's why. We beat Syracuse early on, which was the first time in years. And they were a good ball club. And what brought us together, when you look back, and I told Digger this several times over the years, I had a good connection with Digger Phelps. I felt like, and I told him this, I was an extension of you, Digger. I knew all the plays, as did these, but I had to run the show, like in terms of, he calls a play. We just looked at each other. We knew we're on the same wavelength.
That's right.
Okay, so I was like an extension of him. Okay, and then, everyone else had to follow what we called, basically. So, but we go down to Florida, okay? And at Florida, we played at Miami, hit the beach, we beat them. We play at Gainesville, the University of Florida. And I'll never forget this. Who in their right mind would ever play a game when you start the game with 7 technical fouls and are losing 5-0? Well, we did at the University of Florida because there was a no dunking rule. And Charlie and
dunking the warm-ups even.
Dunking the warm-ups. But they were dunking the whole time, these 7-footers.
You can dunk in the warm-ups.
So remember, the referee comes in with his southern accent and tells Digger in front of us, by the way, Digger, you guys got 7 technicals. So we're standing there on the floor watching them shoot. It's 5-0 before. Well, we were mad. And the other thing about Gainesville, and I know Kenny will back me on this was terrible. This was the Deep South. This is like Georgia, Florida, Okay, this wasn't Florida. This was Georgia. We beat them fair and square. They would not serve Kenny, Maynard, and Charlie because of their color. That's discriminatory practice. Digger said, the captains, what are we going to do about it? I said, we're going to all eat together wherever. I don't care if we go to some 5 and dine store. We are eating together before we leave here. And that, don't you agree that
I didn't know about that till after.
Oh, yeah. We kept it quiet.
I didn't know about that till after.
Right.
Matter of fact, I heard about it when Digger was speaking somewhere and he mentioned it. I said, oh, really? Oh, that was going on? I didn't know.
So you guys had a lot of motivation in that game.
Yeah,
Between before the game with
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
And then afterwards,
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
I mean, they played with a lot of spirit that night, and that was a good team.
Yeah,
and we just rolled them out.
Exactly. And there were a lot of games you guys had like that were just, not only did you guys win, we talked about it a little earlier, these big-time programs, not only are you beating them, but you're beating them pretty handily, and you're really proving.
I think we were talking about in those first several games, 5 or 6. I think the smallest margin of victory was like 12 points.
Well, I explained the reason before.
The press,
The press, we pressured the whole game.
Yep.
Those guys couldn't breathe. That was our game. We were laughing at them at the end of the game. It's just, we're scoring layups. They're full, they couldn't stay with us, and that's why the spread did widen. And it didn't matter if it was home or away. They would just fall apart us because we put that pressure on you. And when you play a game like that, I think Kenny would realize this and agree. I mean, he's a great athlete. I'm not a great athlete. He's a great athlete. You love playing like that, putting the other team under pressure, demonstrating your skills.
We were always on the run.
Exactly.
We were always on the run offensively, always on the run. There was no pulling it back.
That's right.
Let's go at them. So by the time we got to Notre Dame and Marquette, we yeah.
So I want to ask you, coming into the fold, 70-71, how is it establishing yourself as kind of that second scoring option, and how is that working, with Charlie on the offensive side and the entire team as well?
Well, I think one of the good things about Northeastern guys at that time is that if you see somebody can play, you want to play with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't understand these guys now. They don't want to play with a guy who can play, because if you can play, you can play with a guy who can play.
Exactly.
So we all just figured it out as we came along. I started making some shots, and if you start making some shots, you'll get some more shots. And I played team play. I passed the ball. I did what guys how we were taught: pass the ball. If you're not open, when you open, shoot the ball. It wasn't that complicated for
the
me.
ball didn't stop anyway.
Yeah.
It didn't stop for like 3 or 4. No, it was quick decisions. Boom, boom, boom. Someone's open, man.
Yeah,
Someone's
there
open.
was no whole lot of messing around. Yeah.
Skip past
and we had
to the weak
faith in
side.
each other too. We really did.
Oh, really did.
We had each other's back too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we really did. So the Notre Dame game was fun, and the Marquette game was fun.
That's what I was going to ask. Like playing at MSG in front of a sold-out crowd, what was that environment like? How was that energy?
Wow.
I
can't imagine.
I don't think there are words for it yet.
Nothing
like
that.
We show up. We're doing well, and we knew we were playing Notre Dame. I don't think we knew it was going to be sold out, but we knew it was going to be a nice crowd.
Yeah, because St. John's before
No,
was
it wasn't St. John's.
Or I'm sorry, St. John's at the Garden.
Usually, double
was not as crowded as the Notre Dame one. It was
That's
so
right.
that makes sense
That's right, right, right.
where it wasn't exactly sure
And
what you were
since
getting
we won
into.
the Notre Dame game,
yeah,
and which was just a
You couldn't get a
craziest
ticket
week
to
everywhere.
And it was all,
Yeah.
everyone they were blowing the roof off. They were all, you never saw anything like this. Everyone was maroon and white. The
everywhere.
whole stand.
People-
Everyone was a Fordham
Everybody
fan.
was a Fordham fan, yeah. And then the following week when we sold it out, we knew it was going to be sold out against Marquette, which was still just, when I was in the pros and I would run into Dean, Memington, Jones, we would still talk about that game.
It was fantastic. And we should have won.
Yeah.
But it was a fantastic game, but we deserved
We
to win.
had it. We had it. We were just right there. Just couldn't get over the hump, but we lost in overtime. It was a great game.
Yes.
So you talk about the game. What exactly, maybe break it down for us, because, we're kind of working off not that much information,
Yeah.
but what happened in that overtime?
I think that scored us.
Well, it wasn't the overtime.
Yeah.
The regulation.
We had it in regulation.
We never lost the game.
We had it in
We
regulation.
were despondent because we never lost the game at the end of the game. We would always put
Something
you away.
happened at the end of the game that didn't happen to any other game before.
Really?
Yeah, you know what that something was? we missed a foul shot.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of us, 3 or 4 that were at the line. So enough said about that. But they had Jimmy Jones at 6'11".
Yeah.
And we didn't.
Yeah,
Anyone bigger than you see these
down.
guys.
Yeah.
And
He
they just
wore
threw
us
a
down,
high one.
Yeah.
You know?
He just
He
wore us
was
down.
good, yeah.
And you couldn't dunk. That was a tough shot. He caught the ball.
Yeah,
Dropped
just kind of
That's
placing
right.
it.
Talking about close games, I kind of want to fast forward NCAA tournament.
Yes.
Just, kind of talk about, being able to play in that tournament, but also, that Villanova game, close fought, hard fought games, just, kind of breaking that one down.
Well, here's
for
the
us.
problem. It's real simple. He covered it. He was sick.
Yeah.
One of our best players. Charlie got early foul trouble.
Yeah.
So minus those two guys playing a lot of the game, and plus you got to give them credit. I mean, Billy Maynard had to watch Chris Ford, who just died, 6'5", Boston Celtic coach.
Mm-hmm.
There was one guy bigger than another. They had the great Howard Porter.
And Porter, yeah.
Right? Who we actually won that game, you know that. Because Howard Porter signed with the NBA before the game.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember this, Kenny, but he actually ate dinner with us.
He sure did.
He came walking in He came walking in and ate dinner with us. And he didn't. I don't think he knew the difference because he just signed a multi-million-dollar deal, which no one knew about.
Right.
So he knew about it. That's why he was like, okay, he's hungry. He ate with us. No, that's a big no-no.
You know, that's
the
the
other
only
team.
game I wish I could play over in my entire
Oh,
life.
absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, because I had no energy. I had one of those flus that was giving me, that made me feel worse. I probably would have been better off just playing.
So you think you fully energetic? What's that
whole
game
different
like?
Whole different game, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, a whole different game.
Charlie being minus the many minutes. And here's another thing. This is why we thought we would win that and go to the Final Four. We really did.
Yeah, we did.
Because Digger is from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
He knows all these teams at Penn, okay? He knows Villanova inside out. They play at the Plester all the time. He's a Philadelphia guy.
Yeah.
He knows Villanova inside out, okay?
Yeah.
Temple, all these teams.
It's funny how this game was so long ago, and I could tell you guys are still obviously very passionate about it.
What?
Very,
Why wouldn't you be?
It
We're
never
going to the
will be.
Final
No,
Four,
never.
man.
What?
You're never going to forget a game like that. Are you kidding me?
Because
Yeah,
I always think about I wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
I would have rather been healthy and go 0 for 10.
Oh, it's
But
a miss a key
because
ingredient,
then I
man.
couldn't
That's tough.
rebound.
Right.
You know, you just couldn't. You can't run. You can't. You know,
I
the
swear, I
passes
did
that you saw, you were just half a second late. Oh,
Hey,
it was
Kenny,
just
I swear, halfway through the game, I'm ready to throw you the ball. And I said, he's not there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a
Yeah.
delay in my game.
Yeah.
We reversed the ball. We
Yeah.
penetrate and
Yeah,
dish.
we knew
well, there's no
yeah.
Kenny Charles over
Yeah.
here to make the shot.
Yeah.
Because Billy wasn't that great a shooter. Maynard like him, you know, and Charlie inside.
Yeah.
Jack Burek and Kenny Charles, unfortunately. I feel like we could talk forever,
We're
but
good.
really great having you guys
We
on.
gotta have you guys back. We
Anytime.
gotta have you guys
Anytime
back.
at
Thank you
all.
so much.
Thank you,
And
guys.
we'll
Thank
be
you,
right
guys.
back with more members of the team.
Beautiful.
Stick
Yes.
around with more one-on-one.
Thanks.
You're listening to WFUV, New York.
And we're keeping things rolling here on One-on-One, honoring the 1970 and 71 Fordham men's basketball team. It's George Zimbetti and Tom Sullivan here with us now. And guys, overall, first things first, you know, I'll start with you, George. Just give me your thoughts on the ceremony today. What are you looking forward to? And how's it been so far just being here and seeing your teammates?
Oh, it's been outstanding. We had a great night last night at the dinner. And Digger was there, and it was just fun to see everybody. It was, 52 years later, it seems like yesterday.
I could tell when you guys, talking in the back there, it seems like you guys are just all right back to when you were 50 years ago, which is so awesome. And I think that shows really how close your team was.
Well, I think that was a big part of the success. You know, we were really good friends. We had come off a year before where we struggled a little. That was my sophomore year and Charlie and Jack's junior year. And we thought we were better than that. And then we added, Kenny obviously was a great addition, and Bart Wojtowicz a good size addition. George didn't play that year when before Digger came. So we knew we were going to be a lot better just from personnel. But I think one of the things that struck us was how close we were and how Digger managed to bond us. Sometimes he was a real pain in the neck. We were doing drills. I forget, he had this harness where you'd pull on the door, and we'd tie ourselves to the door and pull on the harness. We thought he was nuts. And then intervals, Kenny ran out of socks in intervals because, he was always complaining about his sneakers. But we ran him into the ground, and we became a team that was very close, and we were in great shape.
Yeah, you can go to either of you, but you guys can both give your answer to this. But at what point in the year was it like, okay, we've got something here? Maybe it had clicked for game one, but you guys started to realize you had something special.
I think when we went down to Florida, and we played Miami, University of Florida, under very adverse conditions and hostile crowds, and we were able to beat those teams. That to me was a turning point.
Yeah, I thought a turning point was the Rochester tournament. We were playing against Cal, and they had a great reputation. They'd come east, and we blew out the first. I don't know who we beat in the first game, but we just blew them out. And then we played against Cal, and I think that put us on the national map. Again, I agree with
Sully, I have to correct you. We played Cal first.
Oh, okay.
And then we blew out Rochester.
Oh, that's it. That was
126
yes, that's
to
it.
70-something.
Yeah.
It was like crazy.
126?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to say Charlie had 46. We were talking about.
That was that. Okay,
that was Charlie's.
That was a school record at the time.
Yeah. It still is.
I assume. I know definitely
46 points.
I mean, I don't know who's eclipsing that.
That was his coming out party for the pros.
Love it.
But I think that put us on a national scene. But it was funny. I think our opening game was Yale.
You guys played Yale, you beat them 74-56 at the Rose Hill Gym. Your first 4 games were at the Rose Hill Gym. Yeah.
Good scheduling.
Yeah.
Tom, for you personally, you mentioned kind of, playing in 69 and 70 the year before, and then even, the year after with a solid team in 71 and 72. But what made the 70 and 71 team on its own really different or special in your eyes, which is why, of course, they had so much success?
I think it was our ability to press. We really believed in the press. We bought into it. Digger brought that in, and we went from, we were either in a 1-2-2 or a 2-2-1 press. It was a rotational press. It kind of fit a lot of our needs in terms of what our skills were. We had very quick kids who understood the game. Everybody had a very high basketball IQ. And we were all kids that played a lot of basketball. Like nowadays, you'll go to a game and you'll see a kid, they throw a ball inside and he drops it. That never happened on our team, And we were able to take advantage of just being very accurate in what we wanted to do. And on the defensive end, really just putting teams at such a disadvantage because they were totally uncomfortable playing against our press.
Yeah, I got a question for you guys. Specific game we've talked about a lot. That Marquette game, Jim Jones, 6'11". You were 2 of the bigger players on the team. What was that matchup like? Trying to go down, start with George, but yeah.
Well, that was one of my jobs. I wasn't going to contribute much offensively, but as the biggest guy, I had to contribute a lot defensively. So Jim Jones, and John Pleck, and people like that that was my job for the most part. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that because I came in as a freshman with George. We were both recruited together. We were roommates freshman year, and we would have to come back to the room after I considered myself more of a finesse player, and George would beat me over the head. And, he continued to do that to the other team, so we were very fortunate as we moved along. But again, we felt our role was to go in and contribute on the boards and defensively.
George, I'll start with you for this one again here. If you had to pick, you mentioned the Florida game and how important that was and getting things going in the Rochester tournament, but one moment in particular during the season that you may remember the most where you guys feel like as a team, you were fully firing on all cylinders. You were fully clicking, and like kind of Mike mentioned earlier, you thought, okay, we're going to make it. This is a potential NCAA tournament team. This is a team that can make a run.
No question in my mind, it was the Holy Cross game. The first 10 minutes in my mind were the best basketball that I have ever been associated with. Holy Cross was a highly ranked team. I'm not ranked, highly thought of team. And they came into the Rose Hill campus, and after 10 minutes, the score was 32-8. and we would have a series of plays where we would steal the ball on the press 3 or 4 times and score off the press. Holy Cross would call timeout, and Dig would say, "Okay, guys, take the press off." So we'd run out on the court. We would, they would. Let me rephrase it. So we would take the press off. So now, when we scored, and Holy Cross had the ball, they would be taking it out, and they wouldn't see anybody. We were back now, so they were totally discombobulated by the fact that we had, killed them on the press 3 or 4 times in a row, and then they came out thinking that they were going to have a plan to defeat it, and by the time we put on the press again, they would have forgotten what they had been told at that halftime. So that to me was, as I said before, the best 10 minutes of my basketball career.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with him because I was watching that game. I had a sprained ankle, and I remember.
So you had the best seat in the house.
I had the best seat in the house. I remember trying to warm up. They were trying to get. We had a very good. That's when we had a good team physician, Dr. LaPerfido, and he was working on my ankle, putting all sorts of different chemicals into it. But we still couldn't get. I couldn't get back. So I had a great seat for that game, and it was a great game.
Love it.
And we've talked a lot about the different games at Madison Square Garden. We mentioned St. John's, we mentioned Notre Dame. You guys play Manhattan there also at the end of the year. That's become a really big rivalry. That's kind of stayed as kind of the Battle of the Bronx. I'm not sure what your experience was in that game, but how was that playing at Madison Square Garden for that one?
I don't remember that one as well. You probably do.
Yeah, I remember it because one of the fellows on the other team played with me in high school, Bob Gregory, and it was funny. We played very well. We were close with those guys. Brian Mahoney. They were city kids that were in the city, so it was a good game. But we were better than the thing that comes to mind when you mention that. This is a great rivalry, Manhattan, and Fordham. And I was telling the story last night. Bob Gregory, my senior year, which was the year later, I was the captain of this team, and he was the captain of that team. And the officials before the game said to us, and I forget who the official was exactly, but he said, "Listen, fellas, this caused a lot of fights in the stands. We want this game to be a clean game." And at that point, I lunged for Bob Gregory's neck, and I tried to choke him. And the guy said, "What are you doing?" I said, "No, we played high school ball. We never thought about it the way the fight was. We just wanted to play the game."
That's awesome, Tom. I guess my question: do you guys follow the team currently? So do you still hang up around this? So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on what the team's been able to do this year? There's been some comparisons between this team and you guys back in 70 and 71, which is obviously very high praise for what this team and the program's really been able to do this year. Just your thoughts on the group this season.
Well, I think Coach Ergo has done a tremendous job. I think what they've been able to do is extend their defense, pressure people. He's gone deep in the bench. He's utilized his interior people to get easy baskets, and then Quisenberry's been able to come along, similar to a Charlie Yelverton or a Kenny Charles, and act as a scorer. I think they've just done an exceptional job defensively. Now people come in and they say, how do we score against these guys? And I think they've also done a great job of turning the ball over and scoring it when they get it. They don't have to get into set offenses. They can break down the court and get stuff. So they are very similar to us in that sense.
I would say the biggest change that I've seen is in the student involvement. Because, I've lived through the past, 40 years of men's basketball as a team doctor. And one of the, more discouraging aspects of those 40 years has been the lack of student involvement. And to see it come back like that makes all the difference in the world to me as, a fan, really.
So I got like one final question for you guys. The team's back together. You're back on campus. Does it sort of feel like it's almost like it's 1970, 71 all over again?
It's funny. I was thinking of that song, "Oh Cruel Orb That Rules the Night," and it's just one of those things. How fast time goes by. You come back here and our memories just flash back to certain instances.
That's awesome.
And it just becomes very emotional just seeing guys, and knowing the feeling we had for each other then. It was a great time, a very exciting time to be at Fordham, and more exciting to actually be a Fordham basketball player.
George Zambetti and Tom Sullivan, thank you guys for being with us here. We'll have plenty more coming up. Stick around with more one-on-one. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Jack Curry, WFUV class of 1986. WFUV is your home for all things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to One-on-One, the Saturday sports call-in show. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
And we keep on rolling here with three more guests on One-on-One, a special edition honoring the 70-71 Fordham men's basketball team. It's Chip Pollock, Steve Marcelino, and Michael Coyne, but Muggsy is the nickname, and you said everybody knows you as Muggsy,
yes.
So we're going as Muggsy.
Right.
That's the nickname. All three guys managers on the 70-71 team. The senior manager, the leader here, is Chip Pollock. So, where to begin here? I want to start with just overall being here, seeing the guys. What's it been like for the three of you to all be here and see the guys that you work with for a number of years? I'll start with you, Chip.
It was the best. I mean, it's amazing. It's 50 years later, but we're talking to
our friends like we were with them last night, which we were. But so it's really that shows you how close we were. It just immediately, we took off where we left off 50 years ago. So I mean, seeing some of the guys, I see Sully and talk to Sully all the time, and George and Betty, but I don't see a lot of them. I live in New Hampshire, and just seeing everybody is the best. I mean, Muggsy and Steve. I mean, it was the best.
Co-workers here between the three of you. Steve, how's it been being back?
Oh, it's spectacular. Last night was one of those nights you remember for the rest of your life. We were all together 10 years ago, and boy, it seems like yesterday.
Yep.
Down at the Roosevelt Hotel with the coach then, and Digger came in, called us all up to the dais. And it was a big moment, and it was kind of nice for all the three of us. Is that my friends the next day said, "Did you see yourself on ESPN?" And so the three of us are up there holding our plaques on ESPN when Digger and Frank are speaking. And it's a great moment. It's just so wonderful to be back at the university.
Muggsy, how's it feeling?
It's amazing to see you guys, and I'm always honored to be invited back to these reunions because I think it's a special thing for all of us. And my thing that I will add to the thing is because I was Jack's roommate that year, we had to replay the game every night after the games. Jack would come home and we'd go through the whole game again.
Just interviewing Jack, I could tell he, to this day, is still obviously very passionate about every game. There was serious fire in these guys' eyes talking about the Villanova game and talking about those games in MSG. So I'm sure those conversations went on for
hours
on end, breaking down every little bit of the game.
And talking to him last night, it was just like reliving that. I mean, it was an amazing night.
That's awesome. Well, Chip, as the senior, the leader of the managers, I'm curious, first of all, what got you involved and what made you want to be a manager? And second of all, kind of what was that role for you on this 70-71 team?
Well, what got me into it, I went to Fordham Prep too, so I was right on campus, and I had been manager there, and George and Betty went to Fordham Prep with me, and so I was good friends with George, and then. Really, I didn't start out being manager freshman year, but then George and I became really good friends with Sully. We ended up being roommates, and just said, "Hey, why don't you do it?" And I was hanging out with those guys anyway, so it seemed like and I love hoops, and it just seemed like a natural progression. And that year was just. It was just unbelievable. It was just magic. I mean, we could walk around campus. We were like the hottest thing. We were like rock stars.
The managers were.
The managers were rock stars.
It
was great. Everybody knew us, and it was magical. I mean, I know it's cliche, but it was just. We had so much fun, and we were really good. I mean, I think that's part of it. And winning like this year's team, they're winning a lot. So all of a sudden, the places being packed and everything so the momentum was just building and it was great. I mean, working with these guys, we were all together. There was no head man. I mean, I traveled, but that was the difference.
Yeah. So were you the only one that would travel for the
that
road
year?
games,
but those guys.
If it was a bus trip, we all went.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
But
so
if
obviously
it was a flight, then Chip went.
Got it. So that's what I was asking. So about MSG and the
We
games
were all
there,
at those
you
games.
were all
the
there.
games, yeah.
So Steve, I'll start with you here. What was that environment like, and how cool was it for you guys? To be, were you sitting on the bench for the game? Sitting on the end of the bench and being at Madison Square Garden.
Well, the whole environment was spectacular. When we go on some road trips, would drive. Muggsy and I would drive with a bunch of the folks from Fordham. We'd borrow our parents' cars so you can fit everybody in. Violent was probably every speed rule around.
Raleigh, we drove to Raleigh together.
We drove to Raleigh down to North Carolina State.
NCAA games.
Yeah, and so it was a great environment. My job primarily was to keep the books and keep the stats. And so that's how I got
Whence he got his nickname.
Stevie Stats.
Stevie Stats. I love it. That's clever.
Of course, the guys would always be, particularly after our wins and combined, to make certain I'd gotten the numbers right, particularly Jack. So
Jack was always concerned about he got the right
He got the right
assist.
stats.
The right assist.
Got it. I'm sure he bugged you about that plenty, considering you lived with him. Yeah.
And Digger was very intense, so he'd come to me particularly on the book, and he'd say to make certain that everything was right. He wanted to manage his game very carefully, timeouts. He and his assistants, Frank and Artie, rest his soul, and Gene, they were all really honest. And Chip and Muggsy will tell you that we got our fair share of, it's a Digger pushing. Right?
Yes, I'm sure
we really
did.
had to do our
It
jobs.
wasn't just the players that was getting that.
About the picture.
Oh, yeah, the famous picture that's up every place of the team.
Yeah.
Well, if you notice, the managers are not in the picture.
Yes.
Digger was in our name is, I think it says missing, and there are 3 names in it.
Oh,
not
really? That's
but,
horrible.
But it's the picture. I mean, it's up in the field house.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the picture.
Well, you know what? Maybe a photo today will replace that.
I think
the
if you
picture.
suggest that would be great.
And then you guys will be
He
in
was
it.
mad that day at the manager, so he
pissed
threw
off.
us all out of the gym.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Oh my
It's true.
goodness.
Yeah,
But
wow.
we got him back in one sense because there was a deli next to this great bar we used to go to called the Web, which, by the way, Digger and Frank would also frequent occasionally after some of our big wins. And our pictures as managers was put on the deli wall. So at least we had some recognition in the context of it.
It's Chip Pollock, Steve Marcelino, and Michael Coyne Muggsy. All three of us, the managers here with us, guys. Thank you so much for taking a couple minutes to be with us.
Thanks a
Thanks
lot.
for having
We're
us.
so glad to be back.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
We'll be back with more one-on-one.
Hey everyone, Michael Calamari here, one of the beat reporters for this season's New York Knicks basketball team. Follow us all season on WFUV Sports, on our Twitter for game and player updates, and on our YouTube channel for a post-game recap following every home game. Also, keep an eye out for special reports on WFUVSports.org throughout the year. For all things New York Knicks basketball, follow WFUV Sports all season long.
Welcome back to One-on-One here, honoring the 70-71 Fordham men's basketball team. Sam Davis back with Mike Calamari here. We are now joined by Wendell Holland and Gene Doris, two players on player on the Fordham basketball team, and Gene, one of the assistant coaches as well as the associate athletic director. And the two of you being with us here overall, just first of all, how has it been? I've been asking everyone, but I want to get everybody's thoughts on being back with the guys, back with the team overall. What's it been like? I'll start with you, Wendell.
Sure. First, I want to thank Frank for bringing us all together. He's been a looming figure at Fordham for years, for decades, and he shows why by bringing us together. Second, I want to wish FUV happy 75th anniversary.
Oh my!
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
In my day, you were just 25 years old. Imagine that, Gene. They were just 25 years old, and they're up to 75 years now.
They got older. We didn't.
They got. But, and this is just an aside, when you guys got started, it was through some historic times. Jackie Robinson in 1947 had just come into baseball. The speed of sound, Chuck Yeager had just broken it. And you say, boy, what kind of marvelous events happened then, and now look at where you are. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate that. And
Yeah.
Gene, overall, just being here, what are the thoughts heading into the ceremony?
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, last night was, it's like, God, it was like a return in history, and seeing all the guys was really good. The fact that everybody is still in pretty good health, going, 50 years later is 52 actually years later, is really great. I mean, and I've got to thank. I wouldn't have been part of all of this without Frank McLaughlin, because I got hired in a very non-traditional way.
Explain.
This was 1970. This was the spring of 1970. And I was out on Eddie's Parade. It was like, not like you guys have Senior Week now. It was a little bit more low-key than the Senior Week that you guys have. But the bottom line came down to, all of a sudden, I see Frank McLaughlin coming across Eddie's Parade toward me. And I'm wondering, what's he doing here? Because at the time, he had been, before that, the assistant coach at Holy Cross College. And so I didn't know what was going on. And, he comes over and he goes, how'd you like to meet Digger Phelps? He's the new coach here. Sure. That'd be great. Then we're walking over, and he said, how'd you like to work with us? And I'm like, doing what? He says, well, let's talk when we get upstairs. So within an hour, I'm meeting with Frank, Digger, and I'm hired on to be one of the assistants.
I hope you were dressed well enough. I don't know, just randomly showing up.
Basically
walking
shorts
into
and a T-shirt, and as you would typically look at Eddie's Parade in the
That's
spring.
funny.
And
That's so
was
funny.
that was the start, really, of all of it when it came down to it. I mean, I was supposed to be going into the Air Force in another year. I was going to graduate school at Fordham the year after. And then, my whole life was supposed to be going into the legal practice, having Wendell here sitting next to me. And that year kind of derailed me into a whole new career when it came down to it. And I actually thought I knew what I was doing after that year, which was, dumb on my part. But it was a great ride, if you want to call it that. And I don't think people can, Wendell, I'm sure, and I got the opportunity to coach my first basketball game on my own because Frank McLaughlin was in the National Guard, and we were splitting the time doing the freshman team. And so Wendell was on the team when we beat the West Point Plebes, which was, I'm 1-0 at Fordham University. Just remember that.
Wow, okay.
1-0.
Yes. Well, I mean, we'll always remember that. I want to ask about, kind of grabbing a lot of the similar questions we've been asking everyone, but the preparation for the year, what was the expectation for the season? And then what was it like when you started off on that great streak, 10-plus game winning streak to start the season?
Well, I think a lot of it you talk about God looking out for people. I mean, I don't know if anybody brought it up, but Paul Griswold was supposed to be the center.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say a couple of weeks before the season started, he blows his knee out in practice. And, we were looking at that time at playing a lot of zone because he was the one big guy we had, and he wasn't exactly the most mobile guy in the world. And zone seemed to be, and Philly, Digger coming from Philly, zone is one of the big things in Philadelphia basketball. And he blows his knee out, and so now we're looking at Tommy Sullivan as being the biggest guy on the team in the center at that point. and we're like, okay, well, came up with the idea of press all over the place and just let it fly. I think the biggest thing that Digger established, which was really important, was the culture. And you hear this all the time, and it's not trite. The culture in the locker room, the culture in the practices, the culture and everything else. I mean, Digger had one great line, and I don't know if this came up in any others, but "Don't let me down" was one of his big things at practice. And quite frankly, when he said that, he didn't only mean don't let me personally down, but don't let your teammates down, don't let anybody down. It's like we're all in this together to get something accomplished. And so that culture, just kept building and building and building, and there were little things that happened along the way that really solidified the team. Not that these guys were all tight, really pretty much before, waiting for somebody to take over and lead is what it came down to. But I mean, because I was around in 70, so I know those guys that were around in 70, and they were all tight.
And Digger certainly stepped up, as that obviously.
He pushed it, as they say. He
leader.
knew the right buttons to push.
Yeah,
I learned a lot from him in terms of how to, deal with people.
And Wendell, being a freshman coming in and being, like you said, like you guys talked about, on the freshman team and being around this group as a younger player, what did you learn from some of the captains, some of the seniors, some of the upperclassmen who we talked to a little bit earlier, between Charlie Yelverton or whether it be Jack Burek or whatever it may be? What did you learn from those guys?
Dedication, affirmation, and that they made the game personal. I suppose, like any coach, all the athletic department wished for was a decent 500, maybe 75% winning games. Digger blew the doors off of that altogether and virtually took us along doing it. I have to tell you that I was on the freshman team, so I had a role, and my role was a stand-in, in debate, where you're practicing for a debate and somebody is standing in there.
Like a scout team, I think
Like
they
a
call
scout
it now.
team.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the freshman team used to practice with the varsity, and on big games, certain players would be certain stars on the other team. When we played Notre Dame during Holy Week, I call it February 18th through 25th, when we played Notre Dame, I was the role of Austin Carr. Austin Carr
That's
was
quite the
basically
role.
So that meant that I could shoot the ball from virtually any place.
In practice, you're saying?
So in
A guy who was
practice,
a
anywhere.
37 points per game
So-
scorer, and that was your role to take on in practice.
Yes, and I think I did a good job. You know how I measure that by? We won the game. We shut Austin Carr down. We won the game. So
Yeah.
the very next week, we were to play the number one team in the nation, Marquette. And that week, I was their superstar, a guy by the name of Dean Memminger. And I did Dean Memminger well in practice. And I was confident that we were going to win that game. But you know what? We lost. So it was all my fault. but I absolutely agree with Gene that Digger made basketball personal and put it within the context of a university.
Yeah, Wendell, I want to ask about, I'm talking about, freshman team, your role there, and then, making the leap next season, obviously being a part of the team, playing a role on the court with the team. Just, what was the biggest learning experience from that great run, and how did you carry that over to when, you were able to, help the team on the floor the following season?
Tradition. We weren't the Boston Celtics, nor were we UCLA. But that winning season put an enormous burden on us that we were supposed to win and do better next year. And it was a joy and delight trying to continue that tradition as time went on. Didn't quite get it, but you can believe we did a good job of trying.
Gene, just a final question for you and final question for you guys wrapping up here. What is kind of the moment for the coaching staff where you guys felt like this team was really special? This team was bound for the NCAA tournament, or at least bound to make a run, and have the season that you guys were going to have. Was there a particular moment where you felt like that full belief in the group?
I think when you're in it, you're not really thinking about that. And I know I've heard Coach Ergo talking about it after games, and I relate to that very much, because when you're in it, you're thinking about the next game. I mean, when it comes down to it, you're not thinking, hey, we could be an NCAA team, or we could be this, or we could be that. It's like, we're thinking about the next game, and we want to win the next game. And then you kind of let it happen when it happens. The only time you really get to enjoy everything else is like when it's over, and then you realize that. And I do want to make one comment about the student body. That was one of the things that between Frank and Digger, they all understood the value of the student body. And we started at the beginning of the year meeting with different student groups on a Monday night, and Digger would come over and all of that, and we'd be in the dorms. At that time, you used to be able to bring in a keg of beer and some pizza and some other stuff and make that work. But there was an attachment not only to the players, but there was an attachment to the coaching staff as well. And I think the understanding that the students were important to us being part of a winning team was really very much part of the plan.
Can I add to that quick?
Yeah.
My moment of realization was when the freshman games started to be sold out before halftime. That's
awesome.
when it really was. So the gym wasn't empty. As the season progressed, we started to get sellouts for our games at halftime, and we genuinely knew we were on a great team when the games were sold out beforehand.
I mean, it's super interesting to hear how the student body, and we hope to bring that obviously back to Rosedale.
Yeah, and of course that's something that's really been a big part of this season. But Wendell Holland, assistant coach Gene Doris, guys, thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely,
thank you for having us.
We'll be right back with some more from 101. Hey everybody, Sam Davis here. Check out WFUV Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at WFUV Sports, and Instagram at WFUV_sports. There you can find all of our content from our beat reporters covering all the New York professional sports, as well as clips and full shows from 1-on-1, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. For everything WFUV Sports, follow us on our socials. Back here on 1-on-1 with our final two guests here from the 70 and 71 Fordham men's basketball team. It's PJ Carlesimo and Bob Larbus with us here. I got it. With us here. Guys, real quick, just give me your overall thoughts of the ceremony today. What are you looking forward to in a couple of hours? I'll start with you, Bob.
I want to see if Charlie can keep it together. I don't think he can.
No chance.
He said he doesn't think that he can.
I don't think he can.
Yeah.
It's an honor that's long overdue, but it's nice that it coincides with us being honored, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's truly going to be exciting, and I was asking a bunch of these questions earlier, but teams back together, you're back on campus. It's got to sort of feel like it's 1970, 1971 all over again, right?
We feel a little older than that, I think. We were in slightly better shape back then, but Charlie's not going to be the only one that's going to have trouble holding it together.
That's true.
Yeah,
guys on the team.
Yeah. And obviously that year, I could tell with speaking to the guys over the course of the last hour or so, it's still that those memories are still so fresh in all your minds, and you could tell that you really can recall all these games of, like going back to, whether it be the games at MSG or the NCAA tournament, of course, and all those memories. Just the year that you guys shared, it really was special. And PJ, being a senior with this group, being with this program for a number of years, and seeing what it turned into in 70 and 71. Talk about the growth of this program as a whole over the years, and how much that they got to 26-3 in such a dominant year in 70.
I don't want to say that Bays and I knew as freshmen, but there was five freshmen. We came in together, Charlie and Billy Maynor and Jack Burek and Bob and myself, and we knew it was a good group. It was a very good recruiting group. And it's funny because over the course of 4 years, we had 3 different coaches. Johnny Bach was the coach our freshman year when freshmen weren't eligible. We played for Dick Tarrant, who went on, was a great coach then. Had been a fantastic coach at Clifton High School, and then here for 2 years, and then he went to Richmond, obviously, and broke every record down there. And then sophomore and junior year, Ed Conlon, who if Charlie is not the best player in Fordham's history, and we think he is, but if he's not, Ed Conlon is. Those are the 2 best players, and there's nobody else close. With all due respect to Kenny Charles, who was a great player, but Charlie Elverton and Ed Conlon are 2 best players that ever played for Fordham. And then Mr. Conlon coached sophomore and junior year. Mr. Tarrant was assistant the sophomore year, and then I think Hank Moreno came in the year after that. And then all of a sudden, Digger and Frankie was the captain of the team when we were freshmen. When we were playing freshmen, Frankie was the captain of the varsity team for Mr. Bach's last team here. So we knew we were good, and we had freshman year when we were on freshmen. They went to the NIT. Sophomore year, I think we were NIT. And then junior year, we did not. We didn't have a great year junior year. And then, of course, senior year, we had the magical year. And, it's I can't say we knew we were going to be, that good, but we knew how good that class was. And then when you backed it up with Sully and Kenny Charles and George Zambetti and then Bart Wardowitz and Tom Pipich on top of that, it was a really, really good basketball team. And Digger came in and did not a good job. He basically, every button he pushed that year was the right button. The only, in retrospect, we were 26-3. Had he played Bob and I more, might have been even better. But truly, seriously, everything that he did that year was the right decision. It was hard to imagine a better year than that.
Yes, it was. In terms of the program, I love the fact that we're here in what's actually year 52, but we're celebrating 50.
Of course, yeah.
It's so nice that the team is good. The student body is back, and it's going to be exciting in the gym today.
It's got to be really exciting. You talk about excitement. What was it like going to Madison Square Garden and seeing Fordham sell out the place for some of those big-time games?
Somebody earlier said they didn't have the words for it yet, and I've been thinking about it because I anticipated this question. I don't have the words for it yet either, but I do have one memory of in the layup line next to PJ. I leaned over and said to him, "I'm really glad I'm not playing tonight," because there were 19,500.
Were the nerves high for you guys even, and necessarily not playing? But
it was.
Yeah.
So what's the noise level? Does it feel just like white noise when it's that packed, or do you still? Is it still like you hear the fans, you hear everything about it?
No, it's because it was the first time. People forget the Garden actually opened our freshman year or sophomore year. We played. I think literally we played in the old Garden, and then like 4 months later they opened the new Garden. It was either February of 67 or 68 or 68 or 69. But the first time it ever sold out, the Garden it used to play Thursday doubleheaders, and it was Bob was right, 19,588. And first we sold it out for Notre Dame, and then a week later we sold it out. Fordham sold it out against Marquette. But it was the first time, and it was a different atmosphere even than the Knicks, who were unbelievable at that time. But the difference, you have a band, it's night and day. As great as the Knicks fans have always been, and as great as it was then, it wasn't like that. And it was so special because they were there for Fordham. They weren't there for Notre Dame. They weren't there for Marquette. they were there for Fordham, and it was incredible. The noise level was unbelievable from the beginning of the game until the end. It was and we almost got both of them, so it was special.
That's PJ Carlesimo there and Bob Larvez as well. Just one quick one to wrap it up, guys. Just overall, what does 1970 and 71? What does that team mean to this program? And what have you seen from the team this year? Obviously, trying to revive this program and bring it back to the heights that they were at with you guys and your team.
At pregame meal, I sat with a group of 5 players, and Darius Quisenberry said, "You guys were the foundation." And I don't know of anything that he could have said that would have meant more to me, because we kind of think that, but to have a player on this year's team, especially a player of Darius's quality, is very meaningful.
Bob's prejudiced, though. He's from Ohio, so he likes the Youngstown guys.
He likes the guy from Ohio.
That's right.
Nothing wrong with that.
That must have been a great small talk.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can't say enough about the job Keith has done. And even last year, Kyle and Keith obviously being a part of that, and Eddie Cull, the job he's done, and the function we had last night downtown, and some of the alums that are back involved, and not just involved, contributing, helping to do things, helping Eddie Cull out, and the Fordham fans and alums in particular that are listening to this. It's a great time to get back involved, and it's a great time for all of us to go to our pockets and do whatever we can to support, because the things that are happening here, it's phenomenal. It has been a long time coming, and as long as Keith Ergo stays here, it's going to continue to happen. As long as Eddie Cull stays here, it's going to continue to happen.
As Coach Ergo says often, it's a great
day to be around.
Exactly.
I can't wait to get in the gym. Get me to the gym. Can we start the game now? Can we start the game now?
We're going to run our way over to the gym, but that's going to wrap up this show here. If you missed any of today's show or any of our interviews, they'll be available on WFUVsports.org, the WFUV Sports YouTube page. Special thank you to Bobby Chaffardini, our sports director, Ryan Gregware for the help getting all these wonderful guests throughout the show. And our guests include down the list of all the guys from the 1970 and 71 show, especially right here, PJ Carlesimo, and of course, Bob Larvez. We also had Charlie Yelverton. We also had Ken Charles. We also Jack Burek. We also Tom Sullivan. You just keep going down the list of all the names. There's a lot of them, but those guys taking some time to be with us, we really appreciate it and give them all the best of luck going forward and in that ceremony heading up at 2:30 for the Fordham basketball game. For Pat Amatora as the radio producer, Andrew Canary on video production, Mike Calamari, I'm Sam Davis saying so long. One-on-One is the production of WFUV Sports.